Chapter 63. Young Master's Tournament. Those were the last words Lin Tao said before he died. Although he didn't finish his sentence, Lin Feng guessed what he meant. Young Master's Tournament. Lin Feng looked miserable as he looked at Lin Tao's lifeless body. Don't worry, father. I will participate in the Young Master's Tournament. Father! Lin Yun's sorrowful cry came from the side. He finally burst into tears. The two brothers stood in front of Lin Tao's body. The atmosphere inside and outside the blacksmith shop was filled with sorrow. The old blacksmith stood by the side, not saying a word. Their hearts were heavy, and their faces were full of guilt. If they didn't go to Twin Dragon Town, perhaps Lin Feng's father wouldn't have died. They blamed themselves. After a long time. Master, my condolences. Jiang He opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything to comfort him. In the end he sighed and said, It's better to bury Grandmaster as soon as possible. Master, my condolences, Xiao Wen and the others said in unison. Lin Feng patted Lin Yun's shoulder. Lin Yun, don't cry. Father has suffered his whole life. To him, this might be a release. He stood up and looked at the old blacksmith. He didn't ask why they were here. Instead, he carried Lin Tao's body and entered the blacksmith shop. The mayor's mansion. After a day of rest, Yang Yi woke up, but he still couldn't get out of bed. When he heard Yang Chen and Yang Mang say that Lin Tao was killed by Qiu Dong, he couldn't help but feel guilty. If I didn't bring Qiu Dong to the blacksmith shop, Mr. Lin wouldn't have died. Yang Yi's heart was heavy. Strictly speaking, he couldn't get away with Lin Tao's death. Mr. Lin, it's my fault. Yang Yi shouted. Because he was too emotional, he fainted again. Brother! Brother! Master! Everyone in the room cried out in surprise. Over the next few days, Twin Dragon's town seemed to be shrouded in a haze. The atmosphere was lifeless, and few smiles could be seen on the people's faces. Lin Tao's tragic death was a huge blow to them. Lin Yun had been guarding in front of Lin Tao's coffin the whole time, not leaving even an inch. Lin Feng, on the other hand, was quite busy. He had to take care of all the matters after Lin Tao's death, including ordering a good coffin, dealing with the remains, buying shrouds, and so on. In addition, he had to keep vigil for more than 2 days. Next, he had to prepare for the farewell ceremony, funeral, and the banquet for the farewell ceremony. Finally, he would be buried in the company of the villagers. There were many things that needed to be settled on the first day. After all, the Lin family only had 2 brothers, Lin Feng and Lin Yun. There were no elders to preside over the matter, so Lin Feng had to preside over the matter himself. This matter could not be left to others. Many of the townspeople of Twin Dragon's Town busied themselves with Lin Tao's matter, rushing back and forth. The coffin was finished that night, and the shrouds were put on for Lin Tao by the 2 brothers. That night, the 2 brothers kept vigil beside the coffin, not saying a word. They were still not used to days without their father. Without the familiar sound of casting iron, it was as if something was missing. Even though their father had never carefully cared for them, and they had always believed that they were not that important in their father's heart, it was only when their father left that they suddenly felt empty in their hearts, as if something was missing. In the past, they were fearless, but now they had no one to rely on. It was not that their father did not care about them, but that a father's love was not as obvious as a mother's love. Their father had actually done many things for them, but he had never made it public. Even if he really did nothing, he was still a solid pillar of support for the 2 brothers. Father! Lin Yun's eyes were red, but there were no tears because his tears had dried up. He murmured, I miss you so much. Lin Feng lowered his head and let out an almost inaudible sigh. Looking at the lifelike portrait, Lin Feng's heart seemed to be blocked by something. It was very painful and painful. Please rest in peace. I will definitely fulfill your wish for you. Lin Feng said silently in his heart, whether it is to become a great master refiner or to make the Lin family famous in the world, I will do it. Then, his eyes narrowed and his gaze became sharp. No matter who killed you, I will make them pay the price. Although his voice was calm, behind the calmness, there was a surging hatred, which was bone-chilling. 3 days later, Lin Tao's farewell ceremony was over. After attending the banquet, the villagers followed Lin Feng and Lin Yun to bury Lin Tao's coffin on Autumn Mountain behind Twin Dragons Town. The standard of the grave was built according to the highest standard in the town. Although it was far less exaggerated than the imperial mausoleum, it was still the highest standard in the small town. After the burial, Lin Feng turned around and bowed to everyone. Thank you, everyone. Teacher, when do you plan to return to the county? Jiang He was too ashamed to mention the past. Lin Feng shook his head. In a few more days. You can go back first. It's been hard on you these few days. Our family still wants to stay together for a while longer. Lin Feng gently stroked the casting hammer. It was the casting hammer that Lin Tao had used for many years. It had been deeply imprinted with Lin Tao's mark. Only here could he feel his father's existence. The familiar smell here made him miss it. Perhaps after a while, he would never feel this smell again. Lin Yun had become even more taciturn these few days. Even in front of Lin Feng, he basically said nothing. Lin Tao's tragic death had left a deep shadow in his heart. The next day. Teacher, take care. Jiang He and the others bade farewell. They no longer had the face to stay in Twin Dragons Town. Lin Feng waved his hand. Be careful on the way. Don't think too much. Hearing this, everyone lowered their heads. They felt even more guilty. After the old blacksmiths left, Lin Feng did not stay in the blacksmith shop. Instead, he went straight to the mayor's residence. He wanted to find Yang Yi to understand some things. Even though he had not figured out the ins and outs of the matter, but he more or less knew some things from the villagers. The murderer who killed his father was already dead. But his identity, his background, his purpose, etc. Lin Feng knew nothing. He needed to find Yang Yi to understand everything. His father could not die without knowing the reason. I am Lin Feng. I want to find Uncle Yang to understand some things. Please inform him. The guard had probably received the order long ago. Once Lin Feng reported his identity, he wanted to confirm Lin Feng's identity. He asked, You are Lin Feng from the Lin family blacksmith shop, Lord Lin? That's right. Lin Feng nodded. Lord Lin, please follow me. My family's lord has ordered that if I see Lord Lin, I will bring you to him directly. There is no need to inform. The guard said respectfully. Thank you. After entering the mayor's mansion, the two of them arrived at the entrance of an elegant, independent and spacious courtyard after about half an incense stick's time. The guard shouted, Lord Lin Feng requests to see you. Lord Lin, please wait for a moment. The guard said and returned to carry out his duty of guarding the residence. At this time, Yang Chen walked out. When he saw Lin Feng, he said in a low voice, Big brother is seriously injured. He can't get up from his bed. Please forgive him for not being able to welcome you personally. Lin Feng shook his head. It's fine. Let's go. Let's talk inside. Big brother is inside, Yang Chen said. After entering the house, Lin Feng saw Yang Yi with a sickly pale face. Lin Feng walked forward and asked with concern, Uncle Yang, how are you feeling? I'm much better, Yang Yi said with shame. It's a pity that my body is unwell, and I can't attend Mr. Lin's funeral. Lin Feng waved his hand and said, Uncle Yang, taking care of yourself is the most important thing. After a pause, he said in a low voice, I came to disturb you this time because I want to know something from Uncle Yang. I hope Uncle Yang can tell me the truth. Looking at his expression, Yang Yi guessed his intentions. He said, I know what you want to ask. Don't worry, I'll tell you everything I know. I'll have to trouble Uncle Yang. Speaking of which, Mr. Lin was only implicated by me. The person that Qiu Dong really wanted to kill was me. Yang Yi felt guilty and his eyes dimmed. I am partly responsible for Mr. Lin's death. His voice was heavy and he couldn't help but let out a long sigh. In fact, Lin Feng had already guessed this, but when Yang Yi said it himself, he still felt uncomfortable. However, he wasn't an unreasonable person and didn't pester endlessly. After all, Yang Yi was also a victim. However, from this point, it could be seen that Yang Yi was indeed a straightforward and upright man. He clearly knew that telling the truth would greatly reduce his position in Lin Feng's heart and might even make Lin Feng hate him, but he still calmly told him. This was a straightforward person. Even though Lin Feng felt uncomfortable, he didn't blame him. Soon, Yang Yi narrated the ins and outs of the whole matter. Lotus Flower Mercenary Group. Lin Feng deeply remembered this name. Every injustice has its perpetrator, every debt has its debtor. Qiu Dong was the captain of the Lotus Flower Mercenary Group and his position was only second to the group leader and vice leader. So, Lin Feng's grudge naturally had to be placed on the Lotus Flower Mercenary Group's head. If there was anyone to blame, they could only blame the Lotus Flower Mercenary Group for sending Qiu Dong and causing Lin Tao's death. After understanding what he wanted to know, Lin Feng cupped his hands and said, "Uncle Yang, please continue to rest. I won't disturb you any longer." After he finished speaking, he turned around and was about to leave. "Wait!" Yang Yi suddenly shouted. "Uncle Yang, is there anything else?" Lin Feng asked. Yang Yi lowered his head and struggled for a long time. After hesitating for a while, he let out a long sigh and said, "Third brother, go and take that thing out." Yang Mang and Yang Chen exclaimed in unison, Big brother, you have to think carefully. That thing is something you risked your life to obtain." No, big brother. That's the treasure you care about the most. If you guys don't go, then I'll go myself." Yang Yi propped himself up and prepared to get off the bed. Yang Mang and Yang Chen hurriedly pressed him down with anxious faces. Seeing his resolute expression, it was obvious that he had made up his mind. The two helplessly looked at each other and finally sighed. "All right, I'll go get it. Big brother, you lie down and don't move," Yang Chen said helplessly. Lin Feng's eyebrows were filled with doubt. What exactly was the thing the three of them were talking about? Why did that thing make Yang Mang and Yang Chen so nervous? Chapter 64. Half an hour later, Yang Chen returned. "Big brother, I've brought the item." Yang Chen walked to Yang Yi's side. Yang Mang closed his mouth slightly and muttered, "Big brother is really something." However, Yang Yi had already made his decision. Yang Chen and Yang Mang couldn't stop him. Compared to the treasure, they were more concerned about Yang Yi's injury. If Yang Yi's injury worsened because of them, it wouldn't be worth it. Yang Yi's gaze fell on the exquisite wooden box. His gaze was complicated. He reluctantly withdrew his gaze and whispered, "All right, give it to Lin Feng." His voice contained a trace of reluctance, but also a trace of relief. It was as if a huge rock had been lifted from his heart. "Big brother." Yang Chen didn't move. He looked anxious. "You just have to listen to me." Yang Yi took a deep breath and said indifferently, "We don't deserve to have this thing at all. Otherwise, we wouldn't have caused so much trouble. Perhaps giving it to Lin Feng is the best choice." "But," Yang Chen was still reluctant. "No buts. If you still recognize me as your big brother, give it to Lin Feng." Yang Yi frowned and emphasized. Yang Chen opened his mouth, but sighed in the end. He turned around and handed the wooden box to Lin Feng with a complicated expression. However, Lin Feng didn't reach out to receive it. Instead, he looked at Yang Yi and said, "This item is so important to Uncle Yang. How can I be so thick-skinned and accept it? Uncle Yang, you should take it back." Previously, he only felt that this item wasn't ordinary, but it wasn't necessarily precious. But now that Yang Mang and Yang Chen had shown such nervous and reluctant expressions again and again, no matter how slow he was, he should have understood the value of this item. If it was an ordinary treasure, he would have accepted it. However, if it exceeded a certain limit, he wouldn't dare to accept it. Lin Feng, if you still recognize me as your Uncle Yang, then you should accept it. Yang Yi's face darkened. Just take it as my atonement for my mistakes. If you don't accept it, I won't be able to eat or sleep in peace for the rest of my life. Lin Feng looked at Yang Yi hesitantly. He didn't know whether to accept it or not. Seeing this, Yang Yi said, "Actually, this thing is not safe with me. I've only had it for a year, and I've already encountered so many dangers. Even if the incident a few days ago didn't happen, I'm afraid it's only a matter of time before I lose it." He laughed at himself. "I don't have the ability to protect him. At the same time, I don't have the courage to use him." What was it that made Yang Yi say that he did not have the courage to use it? Lin Feng was suddenly very curious about the things in the box. But even so, he still wouldn't accept it. If Yang Yi couldn't keep it, then with his ability, it would be even harder to keep it. One had to know that the military strength of Twin Dragons Town was more than 10 times that of many of the rich and powerful families in the county. This thing seemed to be a hot potato. Seeing Lin Feng's strange expression, Yang Yi explained, "Don't think too much about it. The thing inside isn't as exaggerated as you think. Moreover, whether you have the chance to use it or not is still unknown." "Then what is it?" Lin Feng asked. Hearing this, Yang Yi didn't directly answer Lin Feng's question. Instead, he sighed as if he was thinking of something extremely long ago. After a long time, he came back to his senses and said, "I wonder if you've heard of something called a mountain soul?" "I have some understanding of it." Lin Feng nodded. "I have a rough idea of the mountain soul's origin and effects. However, that mysterious and terrifying mountain soul obviously couldn't be trapped by an ordinary wooden box. Although this wooden box was rather exquisite, it was definitely not a treasure. As long as one could afford it, one could buy it anywhere on the street. A long time ago, there was an ancient legend in the Greenwood continent. According to the legend, since the birth of the Greenwood continent, there were a total of 3 ordinary people who had successfully fused with a mountain soul. One of them became a 5-star refiner, and the other became a 6-star refiner. Moreover, the strength of these 2 people had reached the level of a great supreme being. Yang Yi slowly narrated the ancient legend. His voice was faintly discernible, but also carried an infinite amount of emotion. He had heard this from Fu Yi before, but only today did Lin Feng know that ordinary people could become so terrifying after fusing with a mountain soul. Whether it was a 5-star refiner, a 6-star refiner, or an incomparably powerful supreme being, they were all existences that people yearned for endlessly. "What about the third person?" Lin Feng asked. Since the 3 of them had successfully fused with a mountain soul, the third person shouldn't be any weaker than the first 2. The third person? Yang Yi's expression gradually became solemn. His face was filled with endless reverence and fanaticism. With a slightly trembling voice, he slowly said, "The third person was the greatest legend in the history of the Greenwood continent, an absolutely invincible war god, Xing Feng. According to the legend, not only did war god Xing Feng become a 6-star refiner, he even broke through the limits of the Supreme Being and reached an even more terrifying realm, Earth Saint. In this vast world, there was no one who was a match for war god Xing Feng. Even if they were Earth Saints, they weren't a match for war god Xing Feng. War god Xing Feng, what an indomitable man! At the same time, Lin Feng also knew one thing. Above the nearly invincible Supreme Being, there was actually an even more terrifying Earth Saint. What happened after that? Lin Feng curiously asked. After that? Yang Yi shook his head. Not long after, war god Xing Feng disappeared from this continent. He rose like a comet, but disappeared very suddenly. It was as if everything that had happened before was just an illusion. No one knew where he went, and no one knew if he was alive or dead. He only left behind a beautiful legend on this continent. After saying that, he suddenly said with a serious expression, "Lin Feng." "HM?" Lin Feng looked at Yang Yi in confusion. Yang Yi gravely said, "Many people know that war god Xing Feng had fused with a mountain soul. However, very few people know that after war god Xing Feng became an earth saint, he actually subdued another mountain soul. It's just that he didn't fuse with it. Perhaps it was because the mountain soul had been too weak at the time, but after Xing Feng had subdued it, he had imprisoned it in a secret place. He had even specially refined a Supreme King artifact to help it grow faster. Now, I'm afraid that the mountain soul has already grown to a level that's not inferior to the mountain soul that war god Xing Feng fused with back then. That kind of mountain soul was filled with a fatal attraction to anyone. However, not everyone was as lucky as war god Xing Feng. Even a supreme being wouldn't have the confidence to successfully fuse with such a terrifying mountain soul. The thing in this wooden box is the map that leads to the location of that mountain soul. Yang Yi took a deep breath. However, this map is incomplete. It only has a third of the complete map. The other third is in the hands of the Lotus mercenary group. As for the final third, he shook his head. You can only rely on yourself to find it. A map that led to the location of the mysterious mountain soul. Lin Feng's spirit was greatly aroused. Even though he was already prepared, he was still shocked by Yang Yi's words. No wonder the Lotus mercenary group persisted in sending people to kill Yang Yi. No wonder they didn't dare to make it public. They were even more afraid that Yang Yi would leak the news. This was indeed a hot potato, but it was likely that no one would complain about such a hot potato. After knowing its value, Lin Feng didn't dare to accept it. He hurriedly pushed it away. "Uncle Yang, I definitely can't accept it." "Lin Feng, don't tell me you're scared by the mountain soul's name?" Yang Yi said. "That's right. If the 3 incomplete maps are gathered, then it's indeed a priceless treasure. Even if you use the entire country of Zhao to exchange for it, I still won't agree. However, if there's only one of them—" He shook his head. "Then to me, it's no different from a piece of waste paper." Although he said that, if he really spread the news of this incomplete map, there would be countless people who would be willing to use their entire fortune to exchange for the map. Even 6-star blacksmiths would be attracted to the auction as well. Seeing that Lin Feng was still hesitating, Yang Yi sighed. "Lin Feng, just treat it as doing me a favor. This thing has already caused me to be in this state. I really don't have the courage to continue. In this year, I had to be on guard against their pursuit at all times. Living was too tiring. I originally thought that with the position of mayor, the Lotus mercenary group's people wouldn't dare to deal with me again. However, it turned out that I had underestimated their courage and greed. If this map is still in my hands, perhaps I will die because of it sooner or later." As he spoke, he bitterly smiled. "Even my 2 younger brothers might be implicated by me and become innocent victims. Lin Feng, just treat it as Uncle Yang begging you. You must accept it." Yang Yi pleaded. If he accepted it, it meant that he would have to face endless troubles and dangers. If he didn't accept it, he would regret it one day. At this difficult moment, Lin Feng was struggling in his heart. His face was gloomy and uncertain as he hesitated. If it was only him, he would accept it. However, he still had a younger brother. He was afraid that this map would implicate his younger brother, Lin Yun, in the end. Then, even if he succeeded in merging with the mountain soul, what was the point? Yang Yi didn't urge him. He had already said what he needed to say. If Lin Feng still didn't accept it, then there was nothing he could do. In the end, Lin Feng didn't disappoint him. After struggling for a long time, Lin Feng finally gritted his teeth, received the wooden box and said, "Thank you, Uncle Yang." He deeply bowed. He owed this favor too much. He didn't know if he would have the chance to repay it in this lifetime. Chapter 65. By the time he left Yang Yi's house, it was already noon. Lin Feng returned to the blacksmith's shop. The first thing he did was to cook a few dishes and sit at the same table as Lin Yun. Lin Tao was gone. Now that the two brothers were relying on each other, the blacksmith's shop seemed even more deserted. After lunch, Lin Yun said in a low voice, "Brother, I'm going to train now." Then, he walked out of the central room and started to gesture in the yard. He was very focused and meticulous. Alas! Looking at Lin Yun, who was getting colder and colder, Lin Feng sighed. Every time he saw Lin Yun like this, he felt very distressed. But he didn't know how to comfort him. So his heart felt even heavier and more uncomfortable. Lin Yun's current state was really worrying. Chirp chirp. Nono and Lin Feng's minds were connected. It could completely understand the depression and heaviness in Lin Feng's heart. It couldn't help but chirp in a low voice, as if to comfort him. "I'm fine." Lin Feng stroked Nono's head and forced a smile. Nono lay on Lin Feng's feet obediently. It didn't make any noise and was surprisingly quiet. For the willful Nono, this was extremely rare. After lunch, Lin Feng cleaned up the table and washed the dishes. Then, he entered the refining room. Every time he saw the familiar forging tools, Lin Feng seemed to be able to see his father's figure. He saw his father holding a forging hammer and forging tools for the villagers. Ding ding dang dang dang, sounds faintly resounded. The scenes of the past came to his mind one by one. Although it had been a long time, they were still vivid in his mind, as if they were yesterday. For some reason, Lin Feng suddenly felt sad. His eyes were filled with tears. The man who used to be extremely harsh to the two brothers, the man who was serious in speech and manner but silently protected them, was no longer there. He was really gone. They would never see him again. Chirp! Nono's eyes darted around as it let out a low chirp. Its intelligent eyes seemed to be saying something. Lin Feng came back to his senses and rubbed Nono's head. He smiled and said, "Sorry for the past few days." In the past few days, the little guy endured the discomfort and ate some rice. This was not easy for a picky eater like him. However, there was no fresh asparagus fruit in Twin Dragons Town. Even if Lin Feng did not care about the essence stones, there was nothing he could do. Moreover, at that time, Lin Feng was focused on his father's matter and did not have the energy to take care of the little guy. Chirp chirp. Nono mischievously stepped on Lin Feng's shoulder, making a crisp sound. The hot season was fading away, and the temperature was turning cold again. In the blink of an eye, the year was coming to an end. The autumn wind rustled, adding a bit of desolation to this sorrowful atmosphere. For the next few days, Lin Yun cultivated in the courtyard. Every move he made was more violent than before. He was venting the sorrow and pain that had accumulated in his heart. He was venting it all in this endless cultivation. In comparison, Lin Feng was much calmer. He studied quietly in space number 1. Perhaps it was because he was stimulated by his sadness, or perhaps it was because his determination was firmer than before, but he made considerable progress in the study of skills. Although this progress was still far from before, it gave him a glimmer of hope. On this day, Nono woke up early in the morning and flew around Lin Feng while chirping. Lin Feng's consciousness retreated from space number 1 and patted Nono's head to comfort it. "What's wrong, little guy?" He could feel that the little guy was very agitated and anxious, but it didn't know how to speak human language and couldn't tell Lin Feng. Under Lin Feng's comfort, Nono gradually calmed down, but it was still chirping in a low voice. Chirp chirp, chirp chirp, chirp chirp. Lin Feng frowned. It was the first time that he had encountered such a situation. He didn't know how to deal with it. He had only met one demon beast, Nono, in his life. Naturally, he didn't know what was going on with Nono. A moment later, Nono's chirping became louder and louder. Even Lin Feng's comfort didn't work. Lin Yun walked out of the house and asked in confusion, "Brother, what's wrong with Nono?" Although he hadn't known Nono for a long time, Lin Yun liked this little guy from the bottom of his heart. However, with its beautiful appearance, few people wouldn't like it. It was a demon beast that was born to be loved. I don't know. It suddenly started chirping just now. I don't know what happened either. Lin Feng shook his head. At this moment, Nono flew away from Lin Feng's shoulder and chirped even louder. Chirp! As soon as it chirped, Nono's body suddenly emitted 2 rays of light, one red and one purple. The 2 colors intertwined like hemp ropes and merged with each other, finally forming a strange color. This unknown scene stunned Lin Feng and Lin Yun. At the same time, they were also worried. At this moment, a mysterious diagram lit up in front of Lin Feng's chest. It was the same diagram he used to sign the contract of equality with Nono. Unknowingly, a mysterious power quietly passed through the diagram and entered Lin Feng's body. His mind became clear and his body slowly changed. But Lin Feng's attention was all on Nono. He didn't notice the changes happening to his body. Chirp! A chirp even louder than before suddenly sounded. Along with this chirp, Nono's light became even more dazzling. After a long time, under the gaze of Lin Feng and Lin Yun, the light slowly dimmed. They could finally see Nono in the center of the light. However, what they saw left them dumbstruck. Nono was originally the size of an arm, but now it had shrunk several times. It was only the size of a palm. But the color on its body had become deeper and darker. The original bright colors had become more restrained. If one didn't look carefully, it would be difficult to see its extraordinariness. But if one looked carefully, it wasn't difficult to find that it was now even more difficult to take one's eyes off it. Brother, do all demon beasts get smaller as they grow? Lin Yun asked stupidly. Lin Feng was stunned for a moment. He said uncertainly, I don't think so. Although he had never seen other demon beasts, he thought that demon beasts should be the same as humans. They should get bigger as they grow, right? But the scene in front of them really broke their understanding. The world was really full of strange things. Lin Feng, who? Lin Feng suddenly turned his head and glanced around with his sharp eyes. Who's playing tricks? Lin Yun looked at his brother in confusion. Brother, are you okay? Lin Feng looked at Lin Yun in surprise. Didn't you hear anything just now? No. Lin Yun shrugged. Brother, you must have heard wrong. Maybe I'm not in good spirits these days, so I'm having auditory hallucinations. Lin Feng also thought it was his own hallucination. He laughed at himself. Okay, you go and rest. It's not dawn yet. Okay, brother, you also rest for a while. Lin Yun nodded. After Lin Yun left, Lin Feng smiled bitterly. Rest? Do I have the right to waste so much time to rest? He couldn't remember how many days it had been since he had a good sleep. Half a year? Or 8 months? Or even longer than 8 months? Lin Feng. Suddenly, a voice sounded, waking Lin Feng up. This time, he heard it clearly. He was sure that it wasn't his imagination. Someone must be calling his name. This voice was very clear and sweet, and somewhat familiar. Right, this voice sounded like Nono's chirping. He turned his head. Sure enough, Nono's eyes were full of grievance, as if it was very sad. Lin Feng tried asking, Little guy, were you calling me just now? Seeing that Lin Feng noticed and talked to it, Nono immediately flew up and flew around Lin Feng happily. Lin Feng. Lin Feng, strange, its mouth didn't move. Where did the voice come from? Lin Feng held his chin, puzzled. Moreover, he remembered that Lin Yun said that he didn't hear anything. So obviously, only Lin Feng could hear Nono's voice. Was this the legendary telepathic communication? Lin Feng wasn't so sure. But now it seemed that this was the only reasonable explanation. Little guy, what happened to you just now? Lin Feng asked, why did you grow smaller? Nono stopped on Lin Feng's shoulder, tilted its head, and said with confused eyes, what happened? Grew smaller. What happened? Grew smaller. It repeated, but Lin Feng didn't know what it meant. It seems that its intelligence should be about the same as a 2 or 3-year-old human child. Lin Feng thought for a while and stopped asking. In any case, it was a pleasant surprise that the little guy could communicate telepathically with him. As for whether the little guy's strength increased or decreased, Lin Feng didn't care. In his eyes, this little guy was also a member of the Lin family. Even if it became a real ordinary bird, Lin Feng wouldn't abandon it. After thinking for a while, when Lin Feng looked at Nono again, it had already fallen asleep. Lin Feng was shocked. This little guy, when did it become so sleepy? He only heard that when humans were infants, they were very sleepy. As they grew older, the time they needed to sleep would decrease. But this little guy was the exact opposite. Sure enough, strange creatures like demonic beasts couldn't be underestimated. He didn't know if other bloodwing amethyst birds were like Nono. I'll have to disturb Uncle Yang some other day. He's experienced and knowledgeable. He should know what's going on. Lin Feng made a decision. After a while, Lin Feng's consciousness entered Space 1. He said to Number 1, "Number 1, start teaching mode." Number 1 looked at Lin Feng in confusion. For the first time, emotions that only humans should have appeared in that pair of calm eyes of his. "What's wrong, Number 1?" Lin Feng saw that Number 1 didn't move. He couldn't help but turn his head and ask, "Master, you?" Number 1 looked at Lin Feng in disbelief. "The strength of your consciousness is 3 times stronger than when you left Space 1. Other than that, you seem to have some other changes. It's just that the AI can't analyze what those changes are." Chapter 66. Changes. Lin Feng lowered his head and pondered. He didn't do anything when he left Space Number 1. How could there be changes? But since Space Number 1 said so, it must be true. After thinking about it, Lin Feng finally had to attribute the changes in his body to Nono's influence. Other than that, he really couldn't think of any other possibility. So there are such benefits to signing an equal contract with a monster. Lin Feng sighed inwardly and rejoiced in his heart. It seemed that his unintentional action back then not only added a new member to the Lin family, but he also gained great benefit. A 3-fold increase in mental strength. Didn't that mean that the time acceleration function of Space Number 1 could be increased by another 3-fold? Number 1, what's the upper limit of the time acceleration now? Lin Feng asked eagerly. Before this, Master passed the 32nd level of elimination. His consciousness strength is 548p, the time acceleration is 54. 8 times of the outside world, and Master's body strength is 55p. Number 1, who always had a cold and indifferent expression, had a faint smile on his face at this moment. Although Master didn't pass the higher levels of the game, your consciousness strength has increased to 1520p, the time acceleration is 152 times of the outside world, and your body strength has increased to 210p. Congratulations, Master. According to the outside world, Master is now considered a rank 5 Earth Mage and a rank 1 Earth Warrior. Lin Feng was shocked. He never expected that his body strength would increase so much when his consciousness strength increased. But after thinking about it carefully, he didn't find it strange. Mental strength itself couldn't exceed 10 times the strength of the body. Since his mental strength had increased 3-fold without causing him any discomfort, then his body strength had naturally increased a lot. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to stand steadily in Space Number 1 and talk. However, as a rank 5 Earth Mage, he was far inferior to other rank 5 Earth Mages. After all, his affinity with the Earth was too low. With a low affinity with the Earth, the spells he cast naturally wouldn't be very powerful. Let's just focus on refining first. Lin Feng shook his head. It's already very rare to have such an opportunity. As for Earth Mages and Earth Warriors, if I have the chance to get a mountain soul in the future, I'll think about it then. Number 1, activate the teaching mode. Lin Feng thought to himself, the time acceleration is 3 times faster than before. The hope of becoming a 4-star refiner has increased by 1 point. Although his talent was poor, with the help of endless time, he still had hope. At the same time, the flaw in his talent made his foundation even more solid. In terms of mastery of the 100 casting technique and the 1000 casting technique, the number of people in the world who could surpass Lin Feng could be counted on one hand. A moment later, Lin Feng stopped studying. He stood in a daze in the simulated blacksmith's shop, staring at his own hands. After being stunned for a while, he couldn't help but feel wild joy in his heart. My talent! Lin Feng trembled as he muttered, my talent has actually improved. Yes, although there was no instrument to detect it, he had a deep understanding of it himself. He was 100% sure that his talent had really improved. Originally, it would take him several hours to master a technique. Now, in just half an hour, he had successfully mastered a technique. One must know that the difficulty of this technique that he had just learned was not any lower than the previous techniques. Number 1 said in surprise, Master, your talent has indeed improved. With Number 1's affirmation, Lin Feng was even more convinced in his heart. The 1865th technique, continue. Lin Feng forced himself to calm down. He had to verify it again. He was afraid. He was afraid that it was just a coincidence, an accident. However, when another half an hour passed, Lin Feng had once again mastered a technique. It's real. Everything is real. Lin Feng clenched his fist as tears flowed down uncontrollably. This feeling, I haven't experienced it in a long time. When he first learned the 100 casting technique, he had experienced the feeling of quickly mastering a technique. However, when it came to the 1000 casting technique, his learning efficiency was greatly reduced. The learning speed of the 10,000 casting technique was as slow as a snail. During this period, he didn't even know how many times he wanted to give up. Perseverance. It was a simple word, but how many people in the world could do it? Moreover, in that situation, even if he had persevered, there wasn't much meaning. How many people could persevere without any hope in sight? Only a month had passed in the outside world, but Lin Feng had spent several years in Space One. Several years or even longer of loneliness, boring learning, and aimless perseverance. Ha ha ha. Lin Feng indulged and laughed wantonly. That laughter was filled with sadness and desolation, as well as a trace of joy. It was a very complicated laughter, but it was incomparably real. Lin Feng clenched his fist. His eyes were burning with dense sparks of confidence. It's hard to say who will be the main character of the Young Masters tournament. There were still more than 4 months before the Young Masters tournament began. In these 4 months, Lin Feng was confident that he could reach a higher level. Although he might not be able to pass the 4-star blacksmith's test, he shouldn't be too far away. A Samsung blacksmith who was close to becoming a 4-star blacksmith was destined to shine in the Young Masters tournament. And if he could pass the 4-star blacksmith's test, then Lin Feng was destined to be famous all over the world. After all, even a monstrous genius like Xiao Ran passed the 4-star blacksmith's test at the age of 17. Perhaps Xiao Ran wasn't that famous in the Greenwood continent, but his talent was something that no one dared to deny. Big brother Xiao, did you see that? I am one step closer to you. That calm and composed figure appeared in Lin Feng's mind again. One day I will surpass you, because that is also my father's wish. Unfortunately, his father didn't live to see that day. In Space Number 1, that young yet mature figure endured the loneliness that ordinary people couldn't endure. Step by step, he moved forward and grew rapidly. Jingmen City Province. Outside the city, 2 figures were galloping on their horses. Their clothes were slightly tattered, and they looked a little miserable. However, the 2 fierce horses were both of high quality. They were both good horses that were picked out of 1,000. At first glance, one could tell that they were expensive. I didn't expect to be targeted by the demonic beasts of Qingshui River before I left. I almost fell into their trap and was successfully ambushed. The middle-aged man in front sighed with a smile. But, at least I got it done. This trip wasn't in vain. The other person smiled. Sir, for the young master, you really put in a lot of effort. You were even willing to give away such a treasure. The middle-aged man smiled and said, no matter what, I didn't let him down. Taking a closer look, weren't these two people Fu Yuanshan and Song Mingyuan, who had left Jingmen City Province for Sealed Dust Mountain not long ago? In the blink of an eye, the two ferocious horses gradually moved further and further away before finally disappearing on the wide and boundless road outside the city. After returning to the Fu residence, Fu Yuanshan immediately called for the old butler, Meng Shan, and asked, where is Fu Yi? Tell him to come and see me immediately. Meng Shan smiled bitterly. Master, the young master went to Jianglong County and hasn't returned yet. What? Fu Yuanshan raised his eyebrows. He hasn't returned yet? Yes. Meng Shan lowered his head and nodded. Before Fu Yuanshan could get angry, Meng Shan suddenly remembered something. He hurriedly took out a letter from his sleeve and said, Master, this is the young master's letter. Fu Yuanshan's anger dissipated a little. He nodded and said, all right, give the letter to me. You can go and do other things. Song Mingyuan tactfully excused himself. Sir, since there is nothing else, this subordinate will take his leave first. This was the Fu family's matter. As an outsider, it was better for him to not get involved. All right, you can go. Fu Yuanshan waved his hand. After Meng Shan and Song Mingyuan left, Fu Yuanshan opened the letter and read it with a frown. After reading the entire letter, Fu Yuanshan suddenly flew into a rage. He slammed his palm on the table and shouted, Bastard! A surging aura suddenly erupted. The two guards standing at the entrance of the hall suddenly shivered in fear and broke out in cold sweat. After so many years, this was the first time they saw Fu Yuanshan fly into a rage. This was not a good thing. For you, I painstakingly went to Sealed Dust Mountain and took out my most precious treasure. I only asked Gu Wanli to take you as his disciple and teach you the art of refining. But you... Fu Yuanshan was extremely angry. His face was red and his hands were trembling. You would rather take a Samsung refiner as your master than a 6-star refiner. It seems that I have been too arrogant and indulgent of you all these years. That is why you do not know when to stop and when to retreat. He shouted, Guards! Subordinate is here. The guard immediately rushed in and knelt on one knee. Prepare the horse immediately. Fu Yuanshan coldly shouted. Yes, sir. The guard hurriedly retreated. Fu Yuanshan's face darkened. I'd like to see just what's so special about this puny little 3-star weapon craftsman that you actually hold him in such high regard, to the point of refusing to acknowledge a 6-star weapon craftsman as your master. Chapter 67. Fu Yuanshan had just left the Jingmen City Province, and was about to leave again. Others might not know the reason, but Meng Shan and Song Yuanming were able to guess it. However, even though the two of them could guess it, they didn't dare to say it out loud. After all, this was a private matter between Fu Yuanshan and his son. They only needed to do their job well. As for other matters, turning a blind eye was the best choice. Sir, your horse has been prepared. After a while, the guard returned to the hall. Fu Yuanshan nodded. Tell the housekeeper that I'll have to trouble him to take care of the mansion's matters. I'll return after a while. Yes. The two guards replied in unison. After drinking the last cup of tea, Fu Yuanshan turned around and left. His movements were unusually straightforward. Fu Yi was his only child. He was more concerned about Fu Yi's matters than anything else. If Fu Yi had the potential to become a 5-star blacksmith, even if he had to give up his current glory and abilities, he would still be willing. If it wasn't for Fu Yi, why would he take the risk to go to Sealed Dust Mountain? Why would he give his treasures to Guwanli? Now, he could only treat it as Fu Yi being ignorant and didn't understand his painstaking efforts. Perhaps this way, his heart could still be somewhat comforted. You're my son. If you don't understand me, who can? Fu Yuanshan muttered in a low voice. Jia, outside the city, there was a light shout. The fierce horse let out a long neigh, wah. Ha ha! One man and one horse disappeared on the wide road. In another part of the Jingmen City province, Lotus Mercenary Group's headquarters, in a luxurious courtyard. A mysterious person suspected to be a 6-star blacksmith? A middle-aged man frowned as he looked at an old man. Is that Yang Yi really willing to part with it? That was the incomplete map leading to the mysterious mountain soul. In terms of value, even the entire country of Zhao might not be able to match it. At that time, they were extremely lucky to have obtained 1/3 of the map. In order to keep the whole secret, he had ruthlessly killed many capable people and tried to keep the news strictly sealed. It was enough to see how much importance he attached to the map. He really couldn't believe that Yang Yi was willing to reveal the secret of the map to others. Although there is no direct evidence to prove this, all the evidence points to this conjecture. The old man said solemnly, if it weren't for Yang Yi's disclosure, how could a large number of Samsung refiners have been attracted here? What's more, these Samsung refiners all have the same teacher. Even Fu Yi, the only son of the 5-star refiner Fu Yuanshan, is involved. Hearing this, the middle-aged man's frown deepened. Even Fu Yuanshan's son is involved? Things had become very tricky. They didn't have the guts to make a move against Fu Yuanshan's son. Although the Lotus Mercenary Group was in the second echelon among the mercenary groups in Jingmen City, if Fu Yuanshan wanted to deal with them, it obviously wouldn't be difficult. As long as Fu Yuanshan opened his mouth, many people would be willing to earn a favor and join forces to destroy the Lotus Mercenary Group. Destroying the Lotus Mercenary Group, for Fu Yuanshan, was just a matter of a few words. Are you sure this news is not false? The middle-aged man asked in a deep voice. This is what I heard from the mouths of that group of Samsung refiners. Moreover, that group of Samsung refiners didn't know that we were following them from behind. Most likely, they aren't lying. The old man said solemnly, this matter, the mercenary group members who were present at that time also heard it with their own ears. If you don't believe me, you can call one of them and ask. Captain Zhao, you're overthinking. I'm just a little shocked, that's all. I'm not doubting Captain Zhao. The middle-aged man waved his hand and suddenly smiled. After all, this matter is indeed somewhat bizarre. Anyone who hears it may find it hard to believe. The old man's expression relaxed. Captain is right. If it were this old man, I'm afraid I would be the same as Captain. So to say, Qiu Dong most likely fell into the hands of a 6-star refiner. The middle-aged man pondered. If that's the case, then I'm afraid our situation is very dangerous. The old man thought for a moment and his expression suddenly turned cold. He nodded and said, indeed. If a 6-star refiner insisted on dealing with them, then they wouldn't have the slightest power to fight back. Even if they gathered the strength of all the members of the Lotus Mercenary Group, they still wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. How about this, you immediately take some people to Twin Dragons Town and contact that mysterious refiner. It was unknown what the middle-aged man was thinking. His words were very natural, without the slightest intention of blaming the old man. Don't worry, this time, I'm asking you to reveal your identity and meet him as the vice-captain of the Lotus Mercenary Group. I'm not asking you to deal with him. Pausing, he said in a low voice, I hope you can take the opportunity to test him and find out if he's really after that item. If that's the case, then Yang Yi must have revealed that we also have a part of the map in our hands. We can't hide it in our hands, so it's better to exchange it for something real to strengthen our mercenary group. But if that's just a coincidence, then it means that Qiu Dong died unjustly, although the probability was so small that it could be ignored. The old man couldn't help but tremble. His gaze towards the middle-aged man carried some fear. It seemed that this middle-aged man wasn't someone who was easy to deal with. Don't worry. No matter what the result is, I won't blame you. The middle-aged man's slightly profound gaze swept over the old man. After all, you're looking out for the big picture and always prioritizing the safety of the Lotus mercenary group. I can't thank you enough, so why would I blame you? As he spoke, he continued his previous words. If that's just a coincidence, then I hope you can find another way to snatch the map from Yang Yi. He gestured with his hand, and his gaze suddenly became sharp. If necessary, I don't mind you killing that Yang Yi. You must know that only a dead person's mouth is the most secure. As for that item, we can slowly investigate its whereabouts after we kill Yang Yi. In short, keeping a secret was the most important thing. Not knowing why, the old man's palms were sweating. He lowered his head and said, "Yes, Captain. Go, Zhaowen. I hope you won't disappoint me again." The middle-aged man waved his hand. "This subordinate will do his best," the old man said in a deep voice. After leaving the middle-aged man's residence, the old man wiped his cold sweat and let out a long sigh. He was still very fearful of this vicious and merciless captain. After the old man left, the middle-aged man called a group of people over. "This time, you're under Captain Zhao's command. You can't disobey any of his orders." The middle-aged man looked at the group of people and said indifferently, "Remember, no matter what he tells you to do, you can't disobey." "Yes, Captain," everyone said in unison. However, Captain Zhao can't escape responsibility for Qiu Dong's death. The middle-aged man continued, "Now, in the mercenary group, there are many brothers who aren't convinced by him. There are even many who view him as a mortal enemy. Therefore, for the unity of our mercenary group, Captain Zhao, there's no need to keep him alive." Facing the group of people's doubtful gazes, the middle-aged man's tone didn't change. "After Captain Zhao completes his mission, find a chance to deal with him privately." "Yes." The group of people immediately responded. Obviously, these people were the middle-aged man's hardcore supporters. No matter how absurd the middle-aged man's orders were, they would strictly carry them out without a single deviation. After everyone left, the middle-aged man sat on the stone bench with a gentle smile on his face. He carefully plucked a flower. "Qiu Dong is dead. Zhaowen, that trash, has no value. Just like you, once you leave the flower." He gently threw the flower into the soil. "You can only become fertilizer for the flowers." Clapping his hands, the middle-aged man stood up and muttered with a smile, "Yang Yi, oh Yang Yi, are you really willing to give up that incomplete map?" He seemed to be asking himself, but also seemed to be doubtful. No one could give him an answer. Everything could only wait for him to find it himself. Time flew by like a shuttle. In the blink of an eye, that familiar fierce horse had already arrived outside Jianglong County. That indifferent figure entered the county in a low-key manner. "Suji blacksmith shop. Fu Yi, Master Lin isn't here. Why do you have to work so hard?" Fu Yi raised his head and glanced at him. He smiled indifferently. "The reason why I work so hard is to complete the test set by Master. It's not to gain Master's pity and take me in as his disciple. I am Fu Yi, the son of the 5-star blacksmith, Fu Yuanshan. I don't need any pity." "You..." The middle-aged man opened his mouth and shook his head. "Forget it. Do as you wish." Could a person who wasn't even a blacksmith's apprentice be able to perfectly control the fire? Fu Yi also didn't know whether he could do it or not. But he wouldn't give up. They didn't notice that a few figures slowly passed through the blacksmith shop's sales area and slowly approached them. One of them was originally angry, but when he heard the second half of Fu Yi's words, that person calmed down a lot. The anger on his face quietly disappeared and he gradually calmed down. I am Fu Yi, the son of the 5-star blacksmith, Fu Yuanshan. I don't need any pity. It was this sentence that caused a subtle change in the person's expression. You would rather take a Samsung blacksmith as your master than a 6-star blacksmith as your teacher. Why is that? The person indifferently asked. Fu Yi slightly smiled. What do you know about the greatness of master? Halfway through his words, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. This voice didn't seem to be the voice of the middle-aged man next to him. Moreover, this voice seemed very familiar. He raised his head in astonishment. Looking at the familiar figure, his eyes widened and he involuntarily cried out, "Father!" Chapter 68. Fu Yi stood up abruptly and stood on the spot. He lowered his head, not knowing what to do. He probably didn't expect that Fu Yuanshan would actually come all the way from Jingmen City. Hearing Fu Yi's shout, the surrounding people immediately looked up at Fu Yuanshan. Everyone kept quiet out of fear and held their breath, not daring to say a word. They already knew about Fu Yi's identity. It was because of this that no one in the blacksmith shop dared to bully Fu Yi. Everyone was very polite to him. Since he called this middle-aged man his father, then this man must be the legendary 5-star blacksmith Fu Yuanshan. This was a 5-star blacksmith. Everyone couldn't help but tremble. This was the first time in their lives that they came into such close contact with a 5-star blacksmith. There were 3 people behind Fu Yuanshan. They were the president and vice president of the Craftsmen's Guild, Qi Ming, White Eyebrows, and Fu Yi's personal bodyguard, Huan. The 3 of them looked uneasy, their eyes flashing with deep worry. They secretly glanced at Fu Yi. This kid is too stubborn. Sir has already arranged a 6-star blacksmith for him, but he refused and insisted on choosing Lin Feng, a Samsung blacksmith. They sighed in their hearts. It's understandable that Sir is so angry. Come with me, Fu Yuanshan said lightly. Fu Yi put down the things in his hands and obediently followed behind Fu Yuanshan. Soon, the group hurriedly left Su Ji blacksmith shop. As for Fu Yuanshan and Fu Yi's departure, no one in Su Ji blacksmith shop dared to stop them. The news of Fu Yuanshan's low-key visit to Su Ji blacksmith shop would probably spread out very quickly. A moment later, the group returned to the Craftsmen's Guild. Qi Ming arranged a quiet room for the father and son, and then guarded outside with White Eyebrows and Huan, leaving an independent space for the father and son. Have a seat. Fu Yuanshan glanced at Fu Yi. There was neither joy nor sorrow on his face, and no one could tell what his expression was. Fu Yi sat down silently, lowered his head, and didn't say a word. The 2 of them just sat in the room, neither of them talking. The atmosphere was extremely oppressive, and there was no movement for a long time. However, from the sweat on Fu Yi's palms, he was actually very nervous. However, when facing his father, he pretended to be relaxed. He didn't want to lower his head to his father, especially this time. Hey, you've grown wings, haven't you? Fu Yuanshan suddenly spoke with a hint of a cold smile. Fu Yi shook his head, still didn't say a word. Fu Yuanshan stared at Fu Yi. He suddenly found that Fu Yi was not young anymore, and he was only half a head shorter than him. Perhaps in 1 or 2 years, he would be about the same height as him. Now I'll ask you again, are you going back with me? Fu Yuanshan said in a deep voice. I want to be Lin Feng's disciple. Fu Yi didn't raise his head and said in a low voice. Hearing this, Fu Yuanshan's face flashed a trace of anger and said, Raise your head and look at me. When Fu Yi raised his head, he looked sharply at Fu Yi. You won't listen to my words? Fu Yi's mouth squirmed a few times and thousands of thoughts turned in his mind, but in the end, he nodded heavily. You! Fu Yuanshan raised his hand, but when he met that stubborn gaze, his hand froze in midair. Looking at his son's silent but stubborn face, Fu Yuanshan suddenly sighed in his heart. This kid, his character is like me, especially like me when I was young. Looking at the current Fu Yi, he seemed to be looking at himself when he was young. At that time, wasn't he also this stubborn, and would rather die than submit? Fu Yi, you're not young anymore. I hope that when you make a decision, you can be more rational. Fu Yuanshan sighed and his voice calmed down. Fu Yi said, Father, this is a decision and not an impulsive one. For me, Lin Feng is indeed more suitable to be my teacher than a 6-star refiner. Only Lin Feng can really help me and let me walk further on the path of refining. What a joke! Fu Yuanshan smiled coldly. How can a mere Samsung refiner help you? Without waiting for Fu Yi to speak, he continued. Just because he taught 16 Samsung refiners? If that's the only reason, then I have to say that you're too stupid. A Samsung refiner and a 6-star refiner, any normal person would know which one to choose as their teacher. But Fu Yi just did the opposite, which was too illogical. Come back with me. I believe that as long as you become Mr. Jiwanli's disciple, even if you don't have any talent in refining, you can still make some achievements. Fu Yuanshan's tone was no longer as tough as before. After all, the stubborn young man in front of him was his only son. How could he bear to really blame him? Fu Yi suddenly asked, Can Jiwanli make me a 2-star refiner? Fu Yuanshan frowned. Although it's a bit troublesome, I think there should be a chance. Fu Yi asked again, Then can Jiwanli make me a Samsung refiner? Fu Yuanshan looked at Fu Yi suspiciously and shook his head. I'm afraid that's not very likely. With your talent and the guidance of a 6-star refiner, it's already very difficult for you to become a 2-star refiner. As for becoming a Samsung refiner, you can forget about it. Let alone Jiwanli, even a refiner who is better at teaching than Jiwanli can't make you a Samsung refiner. In front of his son, Fu Yuanshan disdained to lie to him. Can Jiwanli make me a 4-star refiner? Fu Yi stood up and took a step forward, staring at Fu Yuanshan. Fu Yuanshan suddenly burst into laughter. What do you think a 4-star refiner is? A cabbage on the roadside? The sarcasm in his words was quite thick. No matter where a 4-star refiner is, they can be called a genius. For example, in Jianglong County, any 4-star refiner can call the wind and summon the rain, and have a huge influence. Not to mention you, even those disciples under my tutelage, I'm afraid that not many of them can become 4-star refiners. He pointed outside the room and calmly said, Take senior brother Qi, whom you are most familiar with, for example. His talent can be considered extremely rare in the eyes of ordinary people, but his achievements are still limited to a 4-star refiner. And this is because I spent a lot of time and effort to nurture him so that he could achieve this. If he was taught by someone worse than me, it's hard to say whether he could become a 4-star refiner in this lifetime. Since he can't make me a Samsung refiner, it's even more impossible for me to become a 4-star refiner. Fu Yi shook his head. Then why should I take him as my master? Fu Yuanshan laughed, laughing at Fu Yi's lack of self-awareness, laughing at Fu Yi's whimsical imagination. He smiled faintly. Although I also hope that you can become a Samsung refiner or even a higher-level refiner, it's undeniable that with your talent, it's impossible for you to become a Samsung refiner. Although his tone was light, his words were full of certainty. Why? Fu Yi was very calm, as if he didn't hear anything. Why are you so sure? Is it because I don't have the talent for cultivation? Isn't that enough? Fu Yuanshan's voice sank. Give up, Fu Yi. You don't have the talent for cultivation. On the path of refining, no matter how much you suffer, it will all be in vain. You will never become a 3-star refiner. He let out a long sigh. If you obediently learn from Gu Wanli, you can at least become a 2-star refiner. If you stay here, you will achieve nothing. If possible, he really didn't want his son to embark on the path of a refiner. He himself was a refiner, and only he knew how many hardships he had suffered and how many crises he had experienced to become the head of the 5-star refiners in Jingmen City. Others only saw his glory, but how could they see the price he had to pay for it? He didn't want his son to suffer any more hardship, although he had never said anything, but every time he saw his son bitterly training day and night in an attempt to become a refiner, his heart would ache. Fu Yi, he didn't need to suffer so much. No, only by staying here can I realize my dream. Fu Yi's expression became more resolute. His initial timid expression was as firm as iron at this moment. Even his father couldn't shake his will. Fu Yuanshan suddenly felt a burst of annoyance and scolded, "I've already said everything I can, why are you still so stubborn?" At the same time, a powerful aura erupted from his body, as well as the pressure of a 5-star refiner. Even those 4-star refiners would have to yield under this aura and pressure. He coldly looked at Fu Yi. "Gu Wanli can't make you a Samsung refiner, but can Lin Feng?" "That's right." Fu Yi's face was pale. He gritted his teeth, but his expression became more resolute. "Others can't do it, but Lin Feng can." "Why do you think so?" Fu Yuanshan sneered. Fu Yi's expression didn't change at all. He looked at him without any fear, because he passed the Samsung refiner's assessment when he was just a Samsung apprentice refiner, because his mastery of skills has reached the acme of perfection, and I'm afraid no one in the world can match him. Just based on the fact that he managed to teach 16 3-star weapon craftsmen in just a short month. Chapter 69. Other things couldn't be verified for the time being, but a Samsung apprentice blacksmith from Samsung could be easily found by asking around. Really? Fu Yuanshan's countenance changed in an instant. Fu Yi straightened his back. "I'm not lying." Hearing this, Fu Yuanshan couldn't help but turn silent. Qi Ming didn't mention this issue in the letter he wrote to him. Perhaps, in Qi Ming's opinion, this wasn't very important? But in fact, a Samsung apprentice blacksmith from Samsung was something he had never heard of before. If Lin Feng was really a Samsung apprentice blacksmith, then this person could really be considered a genius. His mastery of techniques, as Fu Yi said, had probably reached the acme of perfection. However, after thinking about it carefully, he overturned Fu Yi's so-called fact. "I've traveled all over the Azure Wood continent in my life. In the Jingmen City province, I'm afraid that there's no one who dares to say that their knowledge and experience surpasses mine. However, I've never seen such a genius before. Not to mention, how could it be so easy to break the refining rules passed down by our ancestors?" Fu Yuanshan calmed down and said lightly, "Don't tell me you think that Lin Feng is powerful enough to create a new refining school? No one understood better than him what a Samsung apprentice blacksmith from Samsung signified. Countless years ago, in order to fight against the demonic beasts, those astonishingly talented seniors created the refining school. As time passed, generation after generation of geniuses continued to research, and only then did they slowly perfect the refining profession. And after so many years, countless geniuses had basically perfected the rules of the refining profession. If one wanted to innovate on such a foundation, the talent required was no less than the sum of the geniuses of many generations. Fu Yuanshan believed that he also had a considerable talent in refining. In this life, he had a great chance of being promoted to a 6-star blacksmith. However, he didn't dare to say that he had a thorough understanding of refining, not to mention that he had made further progress in the research of his seniors. Not only did this require talent, it also required luck. Only when one's talent and luck had reached an extremely monstrous level would one be able to achieve this. I don't know if Lin Feng is that powerful, but I know that what I said is the truth, Fu Yi said. Becoming a disciple of Lin Feng is my only hope. Fu Yuanshan smiled. The truth. He shook his head. What you saw with your own eyes and heard with your own ears might not be the truth. What do you mean? Fu Yi frowned and looked at his father in confusion. You don't understand what it means to be a Samsung martial arts apprentice and a Samsung weaponsmith. Even your senior brother, Qi Ming, may not understand what it means. Let me tell you, it means that he has a talent that is several times more terrifying than any 6-star blacksmith in the world today. Fu Yuanshan stared at Fu Yi. In short, that Lin Feng is most likely not a Samsung martial arts apprentice. On the contrary, his strength should be very good. He probably used some method to hide his aura fluctuations and only showed the strength of a Samsung martial arts apprentice. That's why you were scared by him. If a Samsung martial arts apprentice wanted to become a Samsung weaponsmith, his mastery of skills must be terrifying, and mastery of skills must require a huge amount of time and resources to practice. However, Lin Feng was only 19 years old. Where did he get so much time? Where did he get so many resources? Unless, his talent in learning skills was far beyond those 6-star blacksmiths. Obviously, this was impossible. After all, 6-star blacksmiths were already the pinnacle of this world. The legendary 7-star blacksmiths only existed in theory. In reality, no one had ever reached that height. Even the indomitable hero, god of war Xing Tian, had not reached the level of a 7-star blacksmith. Fu Yuanshan only did a simple calculation and came to a conclusion. He didn't even need to verify this result. He was sure of his own speculation. He smiled faintly. All of you have been deceived by that Samsung weaponsmith called Lin Feng. His tone was full of confidence. He was confident in his own speculation. Fu Yi was silent. Fu Yuanshan's words also caused his thoughts to not be so firm anymore, and he started to hesitate. According to normal logic, Lin Feng's strength should be beyond that of a Samsung martial arts apprentice. However, he has indeed taught 16 Samsung weaponsmith. This is an irrefutable fact. Fu Yi still wanted to make a final struggle. He was unwilling to give up. This was his only hope. Once he lost it, his path of refining would come to an end. Fu Yuanshan couldn't help but laugh. Yes, he has taught 16 Samsung weaponsmith. However, these 16 Samsung weaponsmiths have a certain talent for cultivation. Their strength is not something you can compare with, right? He stared at Fu Yi and asked, Do you have the confidence to train your strength to a level that is not inferior to these old blacksmiths? The answer to this question was obvious. If Fu Yi could train his strength to such a level, he wouldn't have insisted on worshipping Lin Feng as his master. Gradually, Fu Yi's determination began to waver. All the signs pointed to the same conclusion. Lin Feng's strength as a Samsung martial arts apprentice was probably a disguise. However, Lin Feng's figure emerged in Fu Yi's mind. That steady, mature, low-key, introverted figure. That face was always calm and indifferent. No, he is not that kind of person. He is definitely not that kind of person. Fu Yi shook his head. His intuition told him that Lin Feng really only had the strength of a Samsung martial arts apprentice. It was not a disguise. Or perhaps, he was unwilling to accept the truth. He would rather be immersed in his own lies. Because he didn't dare to face the truth. He was unwilling to lose this last glimmer of hope. Fu Yuanshan's mouth quietly raised a small arc. He had spent so much time and effort, and finally, it was not in vain. Father, I believe in him. Fu Yi raised his head. His hesitant eyes gradually became firm. Fu Yuanshan was startled. He frowned. Even now, you still don't want to give up? His tone carried a hint of disappointment. Fu Yi shook his head. Father, you haven't seen him. Otherwise, you would definitely be like me and choose to believe in him. That was a person who made people unconsciously willing to trust. His body seemed to have a natural affinity. By his side, there would always be a feeling of closeness. Fu Yi really didn't want to doubt such a person. Doubting him was the biggest insult to him. You would rather believe in an outsider than your father? Fu Yuanshan couldn't help but laugh at himself. The smile on his face turned into a bitter smile. Fu Yi hurriedly said, No, I didn't mean it that way. There was no need to doubt Fu Yuanshan's position in his heart. He was determined to become a great armament master. At the end of the day, it was actually because his father, Fu Yuanshan, was a great 5-star armament master. He hurriedly explained, Father, you haven't seen Lin Feng with your own eyes. So your judgment might not be accurate. Maybe Lin Feng really. Saying this, he lowered his head and didn't continue. He also knew that the probability was too low. It was almost negligible. Fu Yuanshan suddenly said, Since you think so, why don't we make a bet? What bet? Fu Yi was stunned for a moment. For a moment, he didn't understand his father's meaning. Yes, a bet. Fu Yuanshan lightly smiled. Didn't you say that my judgment might not be accurate? Well then, I will find a time to meet Lin Feng and see if his talent is really close to monstrous. Or is he pretending to be a Samsung apprentice warrior to deceive the world? If he really only has the strength of a Samsung apprentice warrior, then I will allow you to worship him as your master. As for Gu Wanli, I will deal with him. If he is not a Samsung apprentice warrior, then you will listen to my arrangement and follow Gu Wanli to learn armament refining. How about it? Fu Yuanshan had unparalleled confidence in himself. He believed that the truth was exactly as he had guessed. There was no other possibility. Fu Yi hesitated for a long time, unable to make up his mind. If you agree, then the bet will take effect immediately. If you don't agree, Fu Yuanshan lightly snorted, then you will follow your father back to Jingmen City Province. From now on, you will stay at home and don't think about learning armament refining. When Fu Yi heard Fu Yuanshan say so, his heart suddenly trembled and he immediately agreed. This child agrees. Finally, the two reached a consensus. In a flash, the father and son walked out of the room. Master! Qi Ming respectfully shouted. Fu Yuanshan lightly smiled and said, Master has already talked with Fu Yi. We will first meet with Lin Feng before making a decision. Qi Ming, you will now take Master to see that Samsung armament refining master called Lin Feng. Master is very curious. What kind of person could actually make Fu Yi so convinced, and make all of you praise him so much? Qi Ming stared blankly for a moment. Then, he shook his head with a wry smile. I am afraid it will be a bit troublesome to meet him. What? Could it be that he is just a mere Samsung armament refining master? Fu Yuanshan raised his eyebrows. Qi Ming shook his head. That's not the case. He explained, what disciple means is that Lin Feng has already returned home 7 days ago. It will be at least a month before he returns to the county. A month. Fu Yuanshan naturally couldn't wait that long. He frowned. After a long time, he deeply looked at Fu Yi. Then, he sighed and said, Fine. Let's go to Lin Feng's house in person. A 5-star armament refining master actually took the initiative to visit a Samsung armament refining master when he wanted to see him. When had Fu Yuanshan ever experienced such a thing? Chapter 70. Qi Ming looked at Fu Yuanshan in surprise. Teacher, are you going to meet him in person? How could a Samsung refiner do that? Why? Is there a problem? Fu Yuanshan looked at Qi Ming. No problem. Qi Ming quickly lowered his head. However, I only know that Lin Feng is from Twin Dragons Town, but I don't know where exactly he lives. Fu Yuanshan smiled faintly. What's so difficult about that? With Lin Feng's refining ability, I don't think he's a nobody in Twin Dragons Town. When we arrive at Twin Dragons Town, we can ask around. It shouldn't be difficult to find out where he lives. Qi Ming immediately flattered him. Teacher, you're wise. Pausing for a moment, he asked, shall I prepare the horses for teacher and junior brother now? Yes, go ahead. Qi Ming waved his hand. At the same time, Su's blacksmith shop welcomed a group of strangers. The leader was an old man with a wise face. They stayed in Su's blacksmith shop for about a quarter of an hour and left in a hurry after asking around. However, before they left, the old man's expression was very interesting. His eyes were flashing with gloominess. My reputation has been ruined in the hands of this little brat. The old man's voice was low, and his heart was full of anger. 16 Samsung refiners were all taught by a Samsung refiner. If it weren't for everyone saying so, he wouldn't have believed that such an absurd thing really existed. However, since the other party was just a Samsung refiner, the old man was no longer afraid. He waved his hand. Let's go. This time, he would not easily forgive the guy who had humiliated him. Outside the Craftsman's Guild. Let's go. The same words came out of Fu Yuanshan's mouth. The next moment, the two groups of people walked toward the city gate. About a quarter of an hour later, they walked out of the city gate one after the other, mounted their horses, and galloped toward Twin Dragons Town. The 1979th technique has been learned. Student Lin Feng has completely grasped the technique. In Space 1, Number 1 was holding a pointer and looking at Lin Feng with a serious expression. Lin Feng laughed heartily. That's great. He had never felt that learning a skill was such an interesting thing as now. Learning a skill could actually bring him such a refreshing feeling. In the past few days of learning, his improvement could be said to be godly. Compared to when he first learned the 100 casting technique, he was only faster and not slower. This was the effect of talent. Extremely high talent could allow one to master the most skills in the shortest amount of time. In the past, Lin Feng didn't know what kind of feeling it was, but now he knew. This feeling was simply wonderful. He was frantically learning and absorbing, as if he was worried that his talent would disappear at any moment. He had already mastered nearly 1/5 of the 10,000 casting technique, and his refining ability was getting higher and higher in the ranking of Samsung's refiners. If he continued to grow at this speed, even he didn't dare to imagine what kind of shocking achievements he would achieve. He was more confident than ever. In the courtyard, Lin Yun practiced step by step. It was still the same few simple movements, but his movements were much more proficient and gradually lost the jerkiness from before. It could be seen that he had gradually grasped the essentials of these basic movements. Next, as long as he continued to practice, he would be able to display combat strength beyond imagination. After a long time, he stopped to rest for a moment. He sat on the threshold and breathed heavily. She should be strolling around the streets of the county right now, right? Lin Yun sighed softly. A beautiful figure appeared in his mind. After Lin Tao's death, the person he wanted to talk to the most was not by his side. Han Weiwei, the girl who was like a fire spirit. In Lin Yun's heart, this girl's figure had long been deeply engraved. However, Han Weiwei wasn't strolling around the streets as he imagined, but was locked in a house. "Father, let me out, let me out!" Han Weiwei's voice was a little hoarse. She knocked on the door for a long time. Her hands were red, and her voice contained a trace of grievance. She had been locked up for 10 days. In these 10 days, she had never taken a step out of the house. In the side hall, "Master, please forgive Weiwei," a graceful and noble woman begged in a low voice. The middle-aged man sitting at the head said in a deep voice, "This girl's temper is getting more and more wild. If she continues to be so arrogant, I'm afraid she will dare to do anything one day." As he spoke, he shook his head and sighed. This time, she dared to sneak to Twin Dragons Town without our permission. Next time, she will dare to go to the capital alone. With her bit of strength, sooner or later, she would be gnawed until not even a bone was left. Am I not doing this for her own good? The noble woman lowered her head. Her daughter's cries kept ringing in her ears. Her heart ached. Don't pay attention to her. Let her keep shouting. When she gets tired, she will naturally stop. The middle-aged man glanced at the woman and said in a displeased tone, "You have to be careful in the future. Don't spoil her like this. Isn't her current temper because of you? Besides, she is already engaged to the young master of the Qin family. If the Qin family knows about her conduct, how will they dare to marry her?" Hearing this, the noble woman said with a complicated expression, "Wei Wei didn't agree to this marriage. Why do you want to force it on her?" The middle-aged man was angry. What a joke! It's the parents' order and the matchmaker's words. Is it her turn to decide who she wants to marry? He glanced at the noble woman indifferently. "Brother Qin and I are bosom buddies. How can we go back on this marriage?" After a pause, he continued, "Besides, Brother Qin is the governor of Shimen County in Jingmen City Province. The Qin family's power is deeply rooted. I've heard that Brother Qin's eldest son, Qin Ku, is talented and upright. He has already been apprenticed to a 5-star refiner, Master Hanlin. His future will be limitless. Marrying into the Qin family and marrying Qin Ku is Wei Wei's blessing." "But I heard..." The noble woman bit her lips and hesitated. "I heard that Wei Wei seems to like a young man from Qinfeng College." The middle-aged man waved his hand and stopped her impatiently. "I've already sent someone to investigate the person you mentioned." The noble woman asked, "Then what do you mean, master?" "Of course not." The middle-aged man's attitude was firm. "Although this Lin Yun has some talent in cultivation, compared to Qin Ku, he is too far behind. Besides, Qin Ku is not only talented in cultivation, but also in refining. Yes, Lin Yun has an excellent elder brother. It is said that this young man named Lin Feng is a 19-year-old Samsung refiner who has taught 16 Samsung refiners. He can be considered a rare genius. But his elder brother is his elder brother, not himself. Most importantly, in my opinion, his elder brother is still far behind Qin Ku. His future achievements will be below that of Qin Ku." With that, the middle-aged man sighed. He looked at the noble woman and sincerely explained, "Madam, it's not that this husband doesn't want to accommodate Wei Wei, but this husband really can't." He lowered his head and whispered while shaking it, "In terms of talent, Lin Yun is not as good as Qin Ku. In terms of family background, 100 Lins are far from a single Qin family. In terms of friendship, Brother Qin and I are sworn brothers, so we can't break our promise. Lin Yun has nothing. If Wei Wei marries him, I'm afraid she will suffer a lot. Under such circumstances, he naturally wouldn't let his daughter act recklessly." He patted the noble woman's shoulder and said, "This time, this husband sent people to lock Wei Wei in the room not only for her safety, but also to prevent her from having too much contact with that young man named Lin Yun. I hope Madam can understand this husband's painstaking efforts. But if you do this, Wei Wei will definitely hate you." The noble woman was worried. "Wei Wei is a piece of meat that fell from my body. No one knows her better than I do. This child's temperament is like yours. She is very stubborn. If you force her to do something she doesn't want to do, I'm afraid she would rather die than agree." The middle-aged man was upset. His eyebrows were knitted together. "No matter what, I can't let her come into contact with that Lin Yun." At this point, this was the only way he could delay it. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he really didn't want to force his daughter to hate him. "Then, should we tell Wei Wei about this matter first?" the noble woman asked hesitantly. The middle-aged man pondered for a moment and nodded. All right, you find a chance to talk to her and see her reaction first. Chapter 71. Stars were embedded in the curtain of the night. The sky was filled with stars that twinkled like glistening gems. It was another enchanting and tranquil night. On the other side of the Thousand Tortoise Mountain, the faint sound of horse hooves approached with the wind. Damned Linfeng, this time I will definitely make you die without a burial ground. On horseback, Zhao Wen's voice was like the cold wind of the night, giving people a gloomy feeling. Behind him was a large group of people, at least 30. These 30 people were all outstanding members carefully selected by the leader of the Lotus mercenary group. Every one of them had the strength of a rank 3 martial warrior. There were also quite a few rank 4 martial warriors. The strongest among them was their captain, Wei Qing, who was a powerful rank 5 martial warrior. In a small place like Jianglong County, only the Craftsmen's Guild and the county governor's mansion could steadily take down such a force. Other than them, there was probably no one else who could contend against them. Of course, Qingfeng College was an exception. The people of the Lotus mercenary group rode at full speed and finally arrived at the destination of their trip, Twin Dragons Town, shortly after dusk. Wei Qing glanced at Zhao Wen with a sneer in his eyes. This idiot still doesn't know that his death is coming. He didn't forget the leader's instructions. Once this matter was settled, he would find an opportunity to get rid of Zhao Wen as well. Leaving this kind of trash in the Lotus mercenary group was simply a waste of resources. In the dark mountains, the group of horses didn't slow down in the slightest. It's getting closer. Zhao Wen and Wei Qing clenched their fists at almost the same time. A few thousand meters behind them, Fu Yuanshan, Fu Yi Qiming, and Hua An were also gradually approaching. Qiming said, "Teacher, we will soon reach Twin Dragon Town. We just need to go over the mountain in front." Hearing this, Fu Yi clenched his fists and looked ahead with a complicated expression. The moment to decide their fate had finally arrived. Huan secretly glanced at Fu Yi and let out an undetectable sigh. A moment later, when they reached the top of the Thousand Tortoise Mountain, the 4 of them stopped. Fu Yuanshan frowned. "This road is blocked by rocks. Is there any other way?" Qiming asked in confusion. "That's strange. When I passed by Twin Dragon's Town last time, this road was clearly intact. When did it get blocked by a pile of rocks?" He thought for a moment and replied, "This place is blocked. We can take another road, but that road is rarely used, so it's not as wide and neat as this one." "That's good, let's go to the other side." Fu Yuanshan pulled at the stable, making the fierce horse turn around. "Let's go, you lead the way." Changing to another path, the 4 of them continued forward. The night was dark, and a group of unfamiliar tourists visited again. The blacksmith's shop was still lit, as if it wanted to drive away the loneliness of the night, or to warm the lonely souls sleeping underground. The warm and soft light illuminated the entire blacksmith's shop, driving the darkness to an invisible corner. "Lin Yun, it's time to eat." Lin Feng finished his day's study and finished cooking. He shouted at Lin Yun outside the courtyard. Compared to Lin Feng's hard work, Lin Yun was not to be outdone. The most direct result was that Lin Yun's cultivation had reached the critical point of a breakthrough. He could break through the 3rd-rank warrior and become a 4th-rank warrior at any time. Perhaps it was because of Lin Tao's death. His speed of improvement during this period of time was simply unimaginable. This was much more terrifying than the talent he had shown in the past. A 17-year-old 4th-rank Earth warrior, no matter where he was a genius that could not be ignored. Even in the imperial capital, such a genius was rare. Lin Feng was very satisfied with Lin Yun's performance. He believed that with his brother's current talent, sooner or later, his name would shake the world. "It seems that I have to work harder. I can't be beaten by Lin Yun." Lin Feng smiled. Lin Yun wiped his sweat as he walked into the house. Oh, it smells so good. He took a deep breath and then smiled. Brother, what delicious food did you make today? Lin Feng pointed to the dishes on the table. Isn't it the same as usual? It's because you're too tired and hungry that you feel it's fragrant. Lin Yun chuckled and did not reply. He picked up a small piece of meat with his chopsticks and fed it to Nono. Nono, open your mouth. Nono held the small piece of meat in his mouth and chewed a few times before swallowing it down. He revealed a look of disgust as if to say, "It's SOSO. Okay, you eat it yourself. Don't worry about this little guy." Lin Feng patted Lin Yun's shoulder. Come, sit down and eat. Nono's young voice suddenly sounded in Lin Feng's mind. Lin Feng bad. Lin Feng laughed. In just a day or two, this little guy's intelligence had increased a lot. Outside the blacksmith shop, around the corner. This is the place. Zhao Wen's face was ferocious as he laughed in a low voice. In this quiet night, people couldn't help but feel a chill. Wei Qing said, "Aren't we going to find Yang Yi first?" Zhao Wen glanced at him coldly. "What do you know? Yang Yi is already seriously injured and must be recuperating in the mayor's mansion. With the strength of the mansion's guards, if we rush in rashly, the final result will be a lose-lose situation. As long as any one of them escapes, it is very likely that they will leak our identities and implicate our entire Lotus Flower mercenary group. At that time, I'm afraid none of us will be able to escape from the Imperial Army's wrath. Killing Yang Yi was already a risk. If they were found out, only death would await them. Then aren't you afraid of alerting the enemy by killing Lin Feng?" Wei Qing's expression didn't change as he asked again. Zhao Wen shook his head and glanced at Wei Qing helplessly. He was very impatient. "It's so troublesome to talk to people with low intelligence like you." He pointed at the blacksmith shop. "According to our investigation, the relationship between the Lin family and Yang Yi is not shallow. Even if Yang Yi is injured, if he knows that the two orphans of the Lin family have unfortunately passed away, I'm afraid that he will rush over as soon as possible. After such a long time, his injuries should have recovered a little. It shouldn't be that he can't even walk a few steps, right? Killing the two brothers of the Lin family is to lure the snake out of its hole." "Okay, what you said makes sense." Wei Qing powerlessly closed his mouth and didn't say anything else. However, he was inwardly gnashing his teeth in anger. Anyone could tell that Zhao Wen's actions were simply for the sake of taking revenge for a personal grudge. His mouth was full of great principles, one after another, yet no one could refute him. The sharpness in his eyes grew. "I'll let you jump around for a while more. Once this matter is over, it will be the time of your death. If it weren't for the leader's arrangements, he would have already killed this trash that only knew how to blabber all day long." Zhao Wen didn't understand Wei Qing's eyes at all. He thought that the other party was convinced by his superior intelligence. He smiled proudly. "That's right. How can I, Zhao Wen's plan be wrong?" Wei Qing urged. "What should we do? Hurry up and say it. We don't have much time to waste." "Didn't I just say it? Let's just kill our way in," Zhao Wen said in astonishment. "Everyone, charge in together and kill those two brats. Won't that be enough? Are you sure?" Wei Qing stared at Zhao Wen. "Of course I'm sure," Zhao Wen said. "Charge." In the next moment, Wei Qing pulled out his long saber. With a schwa sound, he charged into the blacksmith shop from the corner. His movements were straightforward, without the slightest bit of sloppiness. The 30 people behind him also charged in together without the slightest hesitation. Zhao Wen stood blankly in the same place. He muttered, "I haven't counted to 3 yet." But when he thought about how they were about to kill those two brats, Zhao Wen immediately reacted. As if his butt was on fire, he hurriedly followed. As he rushed, he shouted in a low voice, "Wait for me. Don't make a move first. I have to see them die with my own eyes." In the blacksmith shop, Lin Feng suddenly stood up. His expression changed greatly. He shouted at Lin Yun. "Hurry up and find a place to hide." Lin Yun was at a loss. He looked at Lin Feng in a daze. "Brother, I told you to find a place to hide. Hurry, hurry!" Lin Feng pushed Lin Yun away. His face showed an unprecedented urgency. He, who was always calm and steady, was now full of anxiety. There was even a trace of anger in his voice. He was angry that Lin Yun didn't listen to him and immediately hide. "Oh!" Lin Yun turned around on tiptoe. "Hurry!" Lin Feng suddenly shouted at Lin Yun. His face was distorted, scaring Lin Yun. Lin Yun immediately increased his speed. He quickly flipped over the wall and hid outside. At the same time, the blacksmith shop's door was cut open. A group of people quickly rushed into the blacksmith shop. Looking at the group of people, Lin Feng's expression was grim and incomparably dignified. Fortunately, Lin Yun had already escaped. He let out a sigh of relief. He stared at the group of uninvited guests. His mind instantly guessed their identity. The Lotus Flower mercenary group really has guts. Lin Feng took a deep breath. He was both angry and regretful. Qiu Dong just died not long ago. He actually sent people again. He underestimated the Lotus Flower mercenary group's determination to obtain the incomplete map. He even underestimated the Lotus Flower mercenary group's courage. Chirp chirp. Nono let out a clear and melodious cry. This cry was like a sad song of the night. Chapter 72. Kill! After Wei Qing rushed into the blacksmith shop, he saw Lin Feng in the room at a glance. He raised his long sword and rushed over with an unstoppable momentum. Behind him, 30 members of the Lotus mercenary group followed his footsteps and rushed into the room. Their movements were clean and efficient, not giving Lin Feng a chance to speak at all. Lin Feng closed his eyes filled with the intent to bid farewell. This time, no one could save him, and with his strength as a rank 1 Earth warrior, it was simply not enough. As for the spiritual power of a rank 5 Earth mage, it was even more useless. Not to mention that he had never learned Earth magic. Even if he had, with his low affinity with the earth, its power was particularly limited. Now, there seemed to be no other way but to close his eyes and wait for death. Amidst the shouting of the group, Lin Feng's father's figure floated in his mind once again. "I'm sorry, father, I can't fulfill your last wish." Lin Feng quietly looked at the rushing figure, getting closer and closer. He still had many things to do, but he no longer had the chance. Perhaps all of this could only be left to Lin Yun. Fortunately, Lin Yun had escaped first. This was the most comforting thing in Lin Feng's heart. Chirp chirp. Nono seemed to feel Lin Feng's will to die and couldn't help but let out a sorrowful cry. That sound, in this silent night, was so desolate and sorrowful. Swish, swish, swish. A group of people had already rushed into the room, especially Wei Qing, who was at the forefront of the crowd. The long sword in his hand was already fiercely chopping down at Lin Feng. The edge of the sword faced Lin Feng, constantly expanding and expanding. "I'm free." Lin Feng let out a long sigh. Wei Qing and his subordinates revealed a smile on their faces. They seemed to have already seen Lin Feng's appearance after being beheaded. At this point, no one believed that there would be any accident. However, accidents were everywhere. Chirp, a high-pitched cry of grief and indignation rang out. Compared to before, this sound was a little more angry and solemn, and the volume was also much louder. Most of the villagers who had fallen asleep were probably woken up by this cry. Nono had unknowingly flown away from Lin Feng's shoulder. It flapped its wings and opened its mouth. That cry came from its small mouth. Wei Qing's group was startled by this sudden sound, and their faces immediately changed. Demonic beast. Before they could clearly recognize this demonic beast, Nono spat out a ray of light. That light emitted a grayish-white color. It was very strange, but it made people's souls tremble. In that instant everyone's souls trembled under that light. Chirp, the high-pitched cry rang out again, and this time it was louder than the previous one. Only this time, its voice made everyone tremble. The light enveloped everyone in front of it, and time seemed to have stopped. Everyone's figures were motionless and fixed on the spot. Some people raised their sabers, some people's sabers were already in midair, and some people had just taken a step. The space was infinitely enlarged, and their figures seemed to have been enlarged countless times. The horrified expressions on their faces froze, and their hair, as well as the deep and shallow scars on their faces, were all enlarged continuously. Rumble. The next moment, a deafening explosion rang out. Those figures turned into specks of dust in the terrifying explosion, and the weapons in their hands were also instantly blown into tiny specks of dust. They didn't even have time to let out a scream before they disappeared from this world forever. Terrifying waves of air, with the courtyard as the center, surged out in all directions with an earth-shattering momentum. Bam! Lin Feng was blown away by the blast wave. 3 walls of the house had collapsed, and only half of the remaining wall was left. The roof tiles, bricks, and beams were shaking while collapsing. The entire yard was now full of holes. At the center of the explosion, a huge hole was formed, reaching dozens of feet deep. Instantly, a large amount of water seeped out from the ground, filling up the hole and turning it into a muddy pool. Lin Feng's eyes were filled with shock, and he couldn't help but sigh in relief. Lin Feng's body flew high into the air and smashed into the street behind the blacksmith's house. Pfft! He spat out a mouthful of blood, then his head shook and he fainted. Lin Feng. Nono struggled to fly to his side, and just as it flew above his chest, it finally closed its eyes and fell into a coma. The man and the bird were both covered in bruises and unconscious. Brother! A shrill cry rang out on the other side of the street. That young figure, regardless of everything, rushed over. His eyes overflowed with tears in an instant. No one could see his eyes, that was a kind of despair. He rushed to Lin Feng's side and held Lin Feng. Looking at the almost unconscious Lin Feng, he lowered his head, his whole body trembled, and tears gushed out like spring water. His heart seemed to be torn into pieces in an instant. That was a kind of soul-deep pain. He raised his head. His mouth once again let out a painful and desperate roar. Ah! As if he was questioning the heavens. Why was the heavens so unfair? Until now, he finally understood why his brother suddenly changed his expression and shouted at him to go away. It turned out, his brother wanted to bear all of this alone. Bear all of this alone. The scene just now repeatedly replayed in his mind. Brother, he only cares about my safety. The young figure, the trembling body, the mournful cry. If his brother died, then his sky would collapse. Under the waning moon, that lonely figure seemed so helpless. He gently held Lin Feng, his steps unsteady, and slowly walked toward the Dangyang medicine manual. Brother, if you die, then I will let everyone in the world be buried with you. At this moment, the young man's face suddenly turned cold, his mouth spitting out a cold and emotionless sentence. His body surged with a crazy murderous aura, his eyes seemed to have been soaked in blood, his temperament instantly became cold, as if as long as one passed by him, they would be frozen. No one could understand his brother's position in his heart, no one. Scenes of the past crawled into his heart, he did not know what to feel. Lin Yun, let's go, brother will take you to the streets to see the excitement of New Year's Eve. Come, this is the snack brother secretly bought, quickly eat, if father finds out, he will definitely scold me. Big brother Xiao, Lin Yun, Deng Hai, what is your dream? Lin Yun, brother is participating in the talent test today. Brother's talent is not very good. So, you must work hard, brother's dream, you must realize brother's dream for brother. Although I told you to work hard, don't be too tired. Come, brother will wipe your sweat, rest for a while first. Big brother Xiao passed the Samsung blacksmith's exam. How amazing, Lin Yun, you also have to work hard. Brother can no longer go forward in this life. I hope you can catch up to big brother Zhao's footsteps. Don't lose father's face. Silly boy, what are you laughing at? You have just reached the 3rd rank of martial warrior. Big brother Xiao is already a 4th rank martial warrior. You have to continue to work hard. Big brother Xiao is gone, Lin Yun. Now you are our family's only hope. You must remember, the sons of the Lin family are all indomitable, no worse than anyone else. Don't worry, study in Qinfeng College, I will always be your strong support. Lin Yun, take this is the money I saved. You spend more in Qinfeng College, there will be a lot of places where you need the money. Take it, don't refuse, otherwise I will be angry. Hee, did you learn this gluttonous habit from Deng Hai? Brother. The lonely youth, blood-red eyes, once again dripped with tears. A woo! The sad cry of a lone wolf came from the distant mountains, adding a bit of desolation to the silent street. Chapter 73. Dangyang Medicine Hall. Lin Feng's injury. Dr. Yang's expression was grave, although it won't take his life, but from now on, I'm afraid he will forever lose his ability to refine artifacts. Hearing this, Lin Yun couldn't help but exclaim, lose his ability to refine artifacts. Dr. Yang sighed softly and smiled bitterly. I've been practicing medicine for so many years, and have exchanged experiences with countless of my peers, increasing my knowledge, and thought my medical skills weren't bad. However, not only was I unable to save your father, I'm also unable to cure your brother's injury. To a doctor, this was a huge blow. He said in shame, perhaps my medical skills aren't good enough. I suggest you find someone better qualified. My brother really can't refine artifacts anymore? Lin Yun asked unwillingly. God knows how important Lin Feng was to refine artifacts. If he couldn't refine artifacts from now on, he didn't know what would become of Lin Feng. To Lin Feng, this was no different from a bolt from the blue. After all, for Lin Feng to become a great artificer was Lin Tao's dying wish. But Lin Feng, now, didn't have the ability to fulfill Lin Tao's dying wish. Lin Yun didn't dare to imagine, he was afraid. Dr. Yang hesitated for a moment, carefully pondering for a long time before hesitantly saying, it's not that there's no way at all, it's just that. To cure his injury, it's too difficult. Please tell me, how can I cure my brother's injury? No matter what price I have to pay, I will definitely do it, Lin Yun said agitatedly. Shaking his head, Dr. Yang said, in this world, heaven and earth treasures are extremely rare, but occasionally there will be people who find them. If you can obtain a heaven and earth treasure, and this heaven and earth treasure happens to be helpful in healing bones, then Lin Feng's injury can be cured. Glancing at Lin Yun, he continued, but this method can basically be ignored. Other than this, there's another method. What method? Lin Yun asked nervously. If the second method was the same as the first, then Lin Yun would really fall into despair. Dr. Yang said with a serious expression, Mountain Soul, the legendary Mountain Soul, has an incredible ability. As long as Lin Feng can fuse with the Mountain Soul, he will be able to recover. However, how rare was a Mountain Soul? Not to mention Lin Feng, even among those supreme being experts, how many of them could fuse with a Mountain Soul? Encountering the Mountain Soul itself was already a miracle, and successfully fusing with it was even more miraculous. Therefore, this method was even more unworkable than the first one. Lin Yun wasn't naive enough to think that he would encounter a Mountain Soul just by walking around outside. Are there really only two ways? Lin Yun clenched his fists, his expression ugly. Dr. Yang sighed. If it were someone else, there might be more ways, but there are only two ways that are suitable for Lin Feng. Lin Yun raised his head in confusion, a flame of hope once again appearing in his eyes. What do you mean? No matter if it's an earth warrior or earth mage, they can continuously recover from their injuries through cultivation. However, Lin Feng doesn't have the talent for cultivation, so… Dr. Yang's meaning was self-evident. I understand. Lin Yun lowered his head, giving up on struggling. Sick asterisk asterisk asterisk, Lin Feng was still unconscious. Between his brows there was a faint trace of pain and anxiety. Who is he worried about? Is it me? Seeing Lin Feng's appearance, Lin Yun couldn't help but feel a burst of heartache. Blacksmith shop. It was pitch black here. The oil lamp had already been extinguished in the explosion. A burnt smell drifted with the wind, and wisps of ashes fluttered in the air. Facing the faint moonlight, they danced beautifully, as if they were elves of the night, displaying the charm of the night to their heart's content. Ta, 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 several fierce horses turned a corner and slowly walked towards the blacksmith shop. Is this the Lin family's blacksmith shop? Fu Yuanshan looked at the broken blacksmith shop and frowned. What happened here? Why is it so broken? Fu Yi, Su Liang, and Hua An were all confused. They were also very curious about what had happened here. They dismounted from their horses and slowly walked into the blacksmith shop. The scene in front of them aroused their doubts. Trees were broken, houses had collapsed, and there was a huge muddy pool in the center of the yard. There were potholes everywhere and the walls were broken. In the entire blacksmith shop, except for a room on the left side of the yard that stood alone and intact, there were almost no intact things in the rest of the place. A master fought here. Fu Yuanshan concluded at a glance. According to the traces of the battle, the mysterious master should have only used one move to cause such destruction. Hearing this, Qi Ming, Fu Yi, and Huan all gasped. In their eyes there was a trace of shock. It was hard to imagine how powerful the existence was to be able to cause such a terrible destruction with one move. Even if I used all my strength, it would take at least 10 moves to cause such destruction. Fu Yuanshan took a deep breath, and his face became more and more dignified. This mysterious person's strength is far above mine. I suspect that this person's cultivation has reached the 8th level of Earth Warrior or the 7th level of Earth Mage. In terms of destructive power, an Earth Mage was stronger than an Earth Warrior of the same level, but in a PK between the two, the warrior usually had the advantage. Fu Yuanshan himself was a 7th level Earth Warrior. Since he couldn't do it, naturally he could only guess at a higher level. If this mysterious master came to deal with Lin Feng, then Lin Feng, I'm afraid, is in danger. And if this mysterious master is Lin Feng himself or someone standing on Lin Feng's side, then… Fu Yuanshan looked deeply at Fu Yi. They must have left this place. In this case, where should we go to find him? There was a ruined scene here, and there was no one around. Lin Feng was obviously not here. Fu Yi stared blankly ahead, and a faint figure appeared in his mind. Is he dead? No, he must not be dead. Fu Yi clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. He didn't believe it, or he didn't want to believe it. He hasn't taught me how to refine weapons. How could he die like this? He shouted to the surroundings, Lin Feng, come out quickly. You said that as long as I pass the test, you will officially accept me as your disciple and teach me how to refine weapons. How can you break your promise? Come out. Why don't you come out? He shouted loudly, but the surroundings were still silent. For a long time there was no response. He squatted down, his hands clenched into fists, supporting his body on the ground. A deep sense of powerlessness and pain filled his heart. This was his last chance, but he had missed it. Let's go back. Fu Yuanshan stretched out his hand, preparing to pull Fu Yi up. However, just as he bent down, he suddenly turned his head to look at the corner. A young figure appeared there. His gaze coincidentally met with Fu Yuanshan's. The youth was absent-minded for a moment. When he finally reacted, he actually pulled out his long blade and rushed over. His mouth let out a mournful and angry roar. You damn bastards, it's all because of you. It's all because of you that my brother was killed. The youth seemed to have lost his mind due to anger. In an instant, he lost his reason. He knew that rushing over was equivalent to sending himself to death, but he still rushed forward without a care for his own safety. It's all because of them. It's all because of them that my brother was killed. The youth's eyes had been blinded by hatred. He couldn't remember anything. There was only one thought in his mind, which was to kill these people. Stop. Fu Yuanshan frowned and shouted in a low voice. However, the youth didn't seem to hear it. The figure rushing over didn't stop at all. I asked you to stop. Fu Yuanshan was angry. He suddenly slapped the youth and sent him flying. Although he only used 10% of his strength, it still made the youth temporarily lose his combat ability. Fu Yi, Qiming, and Hua An were also attracted by this scene. They didn't understand who this youth was and why he hated them so much. They didn't seem to have done anything unforgivable. Fu Yuanshan slowly walked to the place where the youth fell and asked calmly, "Who are you? Why did you attack us?" However, the youth didn't answer them. Instead, he still looked at them with hatred and coldness. His eyes were blood-red, and his whole body was emitting a crazy killing intent. Fu Yuanshan couldn't help but frown deeply. What a strong killing intent. I'm afraid that when you grow up in the future, you will be a disaster. With that, he was going to kill the youth with one blow. Father, wait! Fu Yi suddenly shouted. He seemed to have discovered that something was wrong. Walking to the youth, Fu Yi slowly squatted down and asked seriously, "Are you Lin Feng's younger brother?" He vaguely remembered that the old blacksmiths once mentioned that Lin Feng was not alone. In addition to Lin Feng himself, there was Lin Feng's father, Lin Tao, and Lin Feng's younger brother, Lin Yun. The youth in front of them was similar to Lin Feng. He was also slightly younger than Lin Feng. Perhaps he really was Lin Feng's younger brother. The youth looked at them coldly and said sarcastically, "If you want to kill me, then kill me. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Don't think that you can find out my brother's whereabouts from my mouth. I won't give you the chance to hurt him." Hearing this, the several people immediately confirmed the youth's identity. However, their hearts were filled with more doubts. Why did this youth think that they wanted to harm Lin Feng? What was the hidden story behind this? You misunderstood. We don't want to harm your brother. On the contrary, I want to take him as my master. Fu Yi sincerely explained, "In any case, please take me to see him." However, when the youth finished listening to his explanation, he sneered at them and didn't say a word. Although he didn't say anything, but from his eyes it was as if he was saying, "Lie, you can continue to lie." He had already steeled his heart to not say anything. Even if Fu Yi said a deluge of heavenly flowers, he would not be swayed. Obviously, he regarded Fu Yi and the others as the accomplices of the group of people who hurt his brother. Otherwise, why would this group of strangers visit the Lin's blacksmith shop on the same night? If it was a coincidence, the youth would never believe it. Fu Yuanshan, Fu Yi, Qiming and Hua An stood in the same place, staring at each other. For a moment, they didn't know what to do with the youth. Chapter 74. Young man, we really mean no harm. I hope you can tell us where your brother is, Fu Yuanshan said seriously. Qiming and Hua An nodded in agreement. We just came to Twin Dragons Town. We don't know what happened just now. Lin Yun was unmoved. He still regarded them as enemies, thinking that they were the accomplices of the group that attacked the Lin family's blacksmith shop. Qiming rubbed his head and looked at Fu Yuanshan and Fu Yi helplessly. He couldn't think of a way to deal with this stubborn little guy. Think about it. If we really came to harm your brother, why would we bother with you here? We could kill you and then send people to turn Twin Dragons Town upside down. That way we would find your brother sooner or later. Fu Yi explained, Since we didn't do that, it means that we really don't want to harm your brother. Lin Yun sneered. You finally can't help but reveal your foxtail. Fine. Qi Ming slapped his forehead and felt powerless. Oh right. Fu Yi suddenly thought of something. I heard those old blacksmiths mention that Lin Feng seems to have a close relationship with Yang Yi of Twin Dragons Town. Yang Yi is the mayor of Twin Dragons Town. Therefore, as long as we find Yang Yi, we should be able to see Lin Feng. Fu Yuanshan pondered and said, That's the only thing we can do now. Lin Yun frowned and asked, You know Uncle Yang? He had learned from Lin Feng that Yang Yi had helped the Lin family many times. Moreover, Yang Yi was a straightforward person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have forgiven Yang Yi so easily. After all, Yang Yi also shared part of the responsibility for Lin Tao's death. We don't know him, but he should know us. This time, the one who spoke was not Fu Yi but Qi Ming. He stroked his beard and smiled faintly. You won't believe anything we say now, but when Yang Yi confirms our identities, you won't suspect us anymore, right? All right, let's go to the mayor's mansion now. Lin Yun looked straight at the crowd. Do you dare? If these people were thieves, going to the mayor's mansion was equivalent to walking into a trap. If they weren't, then Lin Yun wouldn't have to worry about his brother's safety. It could be said that it was a win-win situation. Why not? Fu Yi stood up and said, Let's go now. Lin Yun raised his hand, struggled to prop himself up, and slowly stood up. This series of movements caused him to grimace in pain, and it took him a long time to recover. After he slowly recovered, he said indifferently, Let's go. Next, the group of people slowly walked towards the mayor's mansion. As the person with the highest status in this trip, Fu Yuanshan couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. He was a dignified 5-star craftsman, but in order to meet a mere Samsung craftsman, he actually had to go through so many twists and turns, with so many situations so troublesome. If this matter were to spread out, it would only take a few days, and the whole world would know about it. He, a 5-star craftsman, would probably become the most humiliated 5-star craftsman in the world. He looked at Fu Yi in front of him, and sighed in his heart. For the sake of the child, so what if I lose face? In order to let Fu Yi recognize reality and accept the fate of having Ge Wanli as his master, even if he had to work a little harder, it was worth it. Time passed, and the town was shrouded in a layer of faint white fog. The moon slowly climbed towards the top of the head, and not long after, it was already hanging above the head. The identities of Fu Yi and the others naturally could be verified. When the group of people left the mayor's mansion, the two brothers Yang Mang and Yang Qin sent them off with smiles, with deep reverence on their faces. As for Lin Yun, his gaze towards Fu Yuanshan was also filled with amazement and disbelief. This middle-aged man who looked to be in his 30s or 40s was actually the world-renowned 5-star craftsman, Fu Yuanshan. As a citizen of Jianglong County under the jurisdiction of Jingmen City Province, Fu Yuanshan's name could be said to be like thunder piercing the ears. In Lin Yun's eyes, a person like Fu Yuanshan was no different from a god. What, now you don't think of us as bad guys? Fu Yuanshan looked at the embarrassed teenager and joked. Lin Yun awkwardly touched his head. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Fu Yi reminded. It's better to quickly bring us to see your brother. We are also looking for him for proper business. Oh, please come with me. Lin Yun reacted and hurriedly nodded. My brother is seriously injured and still in a coma. He is currently receiving treatment from Dr. Yang at Dangyang Medicine Store. Speaking of his brother, Lin Feng, his mood became heavy again, and his tone became somewhat gloomy. Injured? Fu Yi frowned. Fu Yuanshan waved his hand. If you have anything to say, say it when you see Lin Feng. Hearing this, Fu Yi shut his mouth and didn't ask any more questions. Speak softly, it's best not to wake him up. Dr. Yang reminded them, and then hurriedly left. Fu Yuanshan, Fu Yi, Qi Ming, and Hua An looked at Lin Feng, who was covered with injuries, with a heavy expression. As for the Nono beside Lin Feng, except for its good-looking appearance, there was really no difference between it and those ordinary birds. Therefore, they didn't recognize the identity of the Nono for a while. But they were sure that the Nono was definitely not an amethyst bloodwing bird, because the amethyst bloodwing bird didn't have the characteristic of reverse growth. Fu Yuanshan looked at Lin Feng, and had to admit that although this young man had an ordinary face, his temperament left a deep impression, which was hard to erase. Why is he so badly injured? Fu Yuanshan turned his head and asked, before we came, did he fight with others? Lin Yun suspiciously said, I don't know who the other person is, and I don't know what happened at that time. Qi Ming and the others looked at Lin Yun puzzledly. He didn't know? Being stared at by several people, Lin Yun couldn't help but say in a painful tone, at that time I was eating with my brother, but my brother's face suddenly changed, and he told me to run away. I had just climbed over the wall for a few breaths when the courtyard suddenly exploded, and our whole blacksmith shop was almost destroyed by that explosion. After that, I found my brother in a coma on the street behind the house. So, from the beginning to the end, I didn't know what happened, only my brother knew. So, your brother anticipated the danger one step ahead of you? Fu Yuanshan asked. Lin Yun didn't know why he asked this question, but he honestly answered, yes. In fact, he himself also felt very strange. His brother obviously didn't have the talent for cultivation, and his strength was far inferior to him, but how did his brother know the danger in advance? So, it can only prove that your brother's strength is actually much stronger than yours. Fu Yuanshan speculated. This also happened to be in line with his expectations of Lin Feng's strength. But Lin Yun shook his head and said, no. My brother, he doesn't have the talent for cultivation, his earth warrior cultivation talent is low, and his earth affinity is also low. When his talent was first tested, my brother was still unwilling, and desperately trained for a period of time, but it didn't have any effect, and finally he gave up. But according to what you said, how could he sense the danger before you? Fu Yuanshan looked suspicious. The truth is, your brother is stronger than you, but he has been hiding his strength, and didn't show it. If it was anyone else, they would have guessed so. But Lin Yun didn't dare to agree. Others don't know the existence of Nono, but he is very clear. Nono is a demon beast, a very mysterious demon beast. Regarding Nono, he has never been clear about its ability, but he suspects that the explosion was probably caused by Nono, and only that mysterious demon beast can do this. It's just that he didn't dare to say his guess out loud, because he didn't know if these people would do something unfavorable to Lin Feng if they knew the truth of the matter. Whatever you say, in short, I believe in my brother, he won't lie to me, Lin Yun said firmly. Hearing this, Fu Yuanshan's face didn't change. With his identity, he disdained to argue with a child. He turned his head to look at Fu Yi. Not to mention that Lin Feng's strength is not weak, even if he is really just an earth warrior apprentice, he can't teach you. Just now, the doctor has said that Lin Feng is seriously injured, and will permanently lose the ability to refine weapons. How can he teach you refining weapons? These words made Fu Yi speechless. He could only keep silent. Go back with me in the future, don't think about this matter anymore. This Lin Feng. Fu Yuanshan shook his head. With such a serious injury, if there is no accident, I'm afraid his life will be wasted. Although Qi Ming and Hua An also have a good impression of Lin Feng, at this moment, they have to admit Fu Yuanshan's words. Lin Feng, in this life, probably has no hope. I will never forget his amazing skills. Every time I think of it, I am secretly speechless, but, alas, it's really a pity. Qi Ming secretly sighed in his heart. He persuaded on the side, Junior brother, what the teacher said is reasonable, you just listen to the teacher. Chapter 75. Nobody was optimistic about Lin Feng, including Qi Ming, who had always appreciated Lin Feng. The fate of the young man lying on the bed seemed to have been decided by some unknown force. Fu Yi's eyes flickered. He hesitated and couldn't make up his mind. Fu Yuanshan, Qi Ming, and Hua Un looked at him quietly. They had said what they needed to say. Now, they only needed to wait for Fu Yi's decision. He is really here to ask my brother to be his master. Lin Yun looked at Fu Yi with a complicated expression. He had already known Fu Yi's identity when he was in the mayor's house. Lin Yun was very proud of his brother to be able to attract the only son of a 5-star refiner. My brother is always the best. Lin Yun was very proud. But now that Lin Feng had been seriously wounded and lost his refining ability forever, the young man in front of him would probably change his mind. Lin Feng's honor would be gone forever. Thinking of that, Lin Yun felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. When his brother lost his refining ability, he would also lose all the honor and status that was related to it. Isn't this truth too cruel for my brother? He couldn't imagine what kind of blow Lin Feng would suffer after he learned the truth. After a long time, Fu Yi still couldn't make up his mind. He didn't want to change his mind at such a critical moment. It would undoubtedly be mean. It would be like adding fuel to the fire. Rationally speaking, Lin Feng's life was over. His best choice was undoubtedly to ask Gu Wanli to be his master. Gu Wanli was undoubtedly a 6-star refiner. However, he still couldn't give up on Lin Feng. He was still expecting a miracle. He believed that Lin Feng wouldn't be defeated so easily. Father, can you give me more time to think about it? Fu Yi asked. Fu Yuanshan's face darkened. He was very disappointed. He still doesn't want to give up? He really couldn't understand what kind of magic this sickly young man possessed. Lin Yun was overjoyed. There is still a chance. But then his eyes dimmed. Even if Fu Yi didn't give up. With Fu Yuanshan's temperament, after learning about Lin Feng's situation, Fu Yi wouldn't be allowed to make his own choice. There is no need to think about it. Suddenly, a voice sounded. It was a bit weak but cheerful. Everybody thought that it was Fu Yuanshan who said that. But after listening carefully, they found that it was not Fu Yuanshan's voice. Fu Yuanshan was also stunned. Looking in the direction of the voice, the sick young man who had been unconscious all this time had opened his eyes. The words just now were spoken by Lin Feng. "Brother, you're awake," Lin Yun said in pleasant surprise. He immediately walked up and asked with concern, "Brother, how are you? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Fu Yuanshan and the others also slowly walked over. Their gazes were focused on this calm figure. "Don't worry, I'm fine," Lin Feng chuckled. If he said he was fine, then it was naturally not true. This could be seen from his pale face. However, his smile was very calm and indifferent. He turned his head and looked at Fu Yuanshan and the others. "You have all traveled thousands of miles to Twin Dragon's Town. Lin Feng should have welcomed you from afar. Unfortunately, Lin Feng is unable to get up. Please forgive me." "Don't worry about it." Fu Yuanshan waved his hand. Lin Feng said after some thought, "I heard everything you said just now, and my thoughts are the same as yours." Lin Yun's expression changed. "Brother, you know everything? Silly child, even if you don't say anything, I'll find out sooner or later." Lin Feng shook his head with a smile. "Don't worry, your brother is an Iron Man. There's nothing in the world that can crush your brother." His smile was as clean and clear as ever, like a bowl of clear spring water in a deep pool. On the other hand, Fu Yuanshan could not help but cast a look of praise at Lin Feng. He thought, this kid is quite sensible. He turned to Fu Yi and said, "You heard it just now as well. Lin Feng doesn't agree to you taking him as your master." Hearing this, Lin Feng looked at Fu Yi calmly and said, "Even if I wasn't injured, I don't have the confidence to teach you well. Besides, I'm just a cripple now, How can I teach you? Fu Yi, you don't have to waste your time on me. With your father's ability, I believe that he has the confidence to find a truly capable master for you. Following a master is far better than following a cripple like me. With your talent, as long as you work hard, you may be able to achieve greater things than me. Did Lin Feng really not have the confidence to teach Fu Yi well? The answer was no. Even if he became a cripple, he could still rely on number one to teach a large number of disciples who were far more outstanding than him. In this world, no one was more qualified than number one as a teacher. On this point, Lin Feng was 100% sure. But why did he say that? Clearly, Lin Feng did not want to be involved in the feud between father and son. If he became a sacrifice for Fu Yuanshan to intimidate or threaten Fu Yi, it would not be worth it. He was not willing to take this risk for Fu Yi. Fu Yi looked deeply at Lin Feng. If Mr. Lin does not have the confidence, then I'm afraid that no one in this world is confident. His intuition told him that although Lin Feng had become a cripple, Lin Feng could still teach him. There was no evidence, but he firmly believed it. Father, I still want to take Mr. Lin as my master. Fu Yi turned his head and looked straight at Fu Yuanshan. Why had Fu Yuanshan gone through so much trouble to find Gu Wanli and come all the way to Twin Dragon's Town? How could he agree to Fu Yi's unreasonable request? No. Fu Yuanshan did not care about Lin Feng's face and resolutely objected on the spot. His face was extremely gloomy. Fu Yi, I hope that you will not test my patience again and again. His patience had reached the limit, and his anger was on the verge of erupting. Teacher, Lord, please calm down. Qi Ming and Hua unhurriedly bowed. If his subordinates dared to speak to him like this, he would have already punished them or even killed them. However, this was his son. His only son. Fu Yuanshan only felt that there was a burst of anger in his chest that was about to break through the seal in his chest and soar into the sky. With a livid face, he asked coldly, I will ask you one last time. Are you coming with me or not? Qi Ming, Huan, and Lin Yun were so scared that they were as silent as cicadas in winter. They held their breaths and did not dare to make a sound. The anger of a 5-star refiner and a 7th-order warrior was definitely not something that they could bear. At this moment, as a 5-star refiner and a martial warrior of the 7th step, Fu Yuanshan's sharpness was undoubtedly revealed. A terrifying aura enveloped the room. The powerful pressure made everyone feel as if they were suffocating. That pressure was like the weight of 1,000 caddies, pressing down on their shoulders, causing them to break out in cold sweat and find it difficult to breathe. Huff! Lin Feng breathed with difficulty, but the smile on his face did not change at all. Fu Yi looked at his furious father, and there was a trace of timidity in his heart, but, I won't go. Fu Yi clenched his fists, gritted his teeth, and said stubbornly, You! Fu Yuanshan was so angry that his whole body trembled. He glared at Fu Yi angrily, raised one hand and was about to slap him. Qi Ming suddenly knelt down and shouted, Teacher, calm down, calm down. Huan also shouted, Your Excellency, please show mercy. Humph. Fu Yuanshan's hand that was raised in the air stiffened for a moment, and finally, he slowly withdrew it. He narrowed his eyes, which flashed with a sharp light. If you insist on taking Lin Feng as your master, you can, unless you don't recognize me as your father. Hearing this, Fu Yi, who had his head lowered, suddenly trembled. He raised his head in a daze and looked at Fu Yuanshan. Looking at that weather-beaten face, he muttered, Father. Don't call me father. Fu Yuanshan sneered. If you insist, I, Fu Yuanshan, will not have you as a son. Only God knew how much heartache Fu Yuanshan felt when he said those words. Fu Yi lowered his head in pain. He was struggling with two choices in his heart. Should he leave or stay? I'm sorry, father. This voice was almost inaudible. Fu Yi really did not have the courage to say it out loud. He was afraid to see his father's disappointed face. At this moment, when he said this sentence, his heart felt as if it was being torn apart. The heart-wrenching pain and heart-wrenching sadness filled his heart. Ha 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 ha! I really raised a good son. Fu Yuanshan suddenly laughed. He turned around and walked out of the door. Let's go. At the moment when Fu Yuanshan turned around, Fu Yi clearly saw 2 drops of tears falling from the corner of his eyes. At that moment, Fu Yi almost wanted to chase after his father and kowtow to apologize to him. But he restrained himself. He did not know what kind of pain could make this iron-blooded tough man shed sad tears. Father, one day I will be your pride, I will make you proud. I swear, no matter what price I have to pay, I will not let you down. Fu Yi clenched his fist, took a deep breath, and made a vow in his heart. Chapter 76. Little junior brother, you. Alas. Qi Ming sighed heavily. He looked at Fu Yi with a complicated expression, sighed and shook his head. Then, he turned around and chased after Fu Yi. Hua An also hurriedly followed him out. In the blink of an eye, only Lin Feng, Lin Yun, and Fu Yi were left in the room. Is it really worth it for you to do this? Lin Feng asked in a leisurely tone. Fu Yi collected himself and forced himself to calm down. He looked at Lin Feng seriously and said firmly, I believe in you. These few words were enough to express his determination. Since you have chosen to stay, I will do my best to teach you how to forge weapons. But as for what you can achieve in the end, that will depend on your own luck. At this moment, Lin Feng finally acknowledged Fu Yi as his disciple. Lin Yun pulled Lin Feng's clothes and whispered, Brother, haven't you already? Lin Feng smiled and said, Don't worry. Although I have lost the ability to refine, it doesn't mean that I have lost the ability to teach. Fu Yi suddenly knelt down and said loudly, Disciple Fu Yi pays respect to master. He was extremely excited. Finally, he had gained the recognition of Lin Feng and became Lin Feng's disciple. His efforts were not in vain. Haha, get up. Lin Feng smiled and waved his hand. We don't like this. As long as you study refining diligently in the future, I will be very satisfied. Although he didn't say anything, in his heart, he was a little uncomfortable with Fu Yuanshan's contempt. He wanted to use facts to prove that even if he had become a cripple, he, Lin Feng, could still teach an excellent disciple. His teaching was still better than that of a supreme 6-star blacksmith. No one could look down on him, even if he was just a cripple. Raising his head slightly, Lin Feng glanced at the entrance of Dangyang Medicine Shop. His deep eyes flickered with a trace of radiance. All right, I'm going to rest. You guys should go and rest too. There's no need to stand guard here. Lin Feng ordered them to leave. Lin Yun said worriedly, But, brother, your injury. Lin Feng smiled and said, Don't worry, this injury won't be a problem. It won't threaten my life. Well, brother, I'll come to see you tomorrow morning. Lin Yun nodded. Half an incense stick later, Fu Yi and Lin Yun left Dangyang Medicine Shop. When they walked out of the door, Fu Yi inquired, Your blacksmith shop has been destroyed. Why don't we go to the inn and rent 2 rooms tonight? Tomorrow we can think about rebuilding the blacksmith shop. Lin Yun was not in a good mood. He responded in a low voice and did not say anything else. The 2 youths walked towards the inn under the faint moonlight. After a few steps, they suddenly heard footsteps not far away. Uncle Hua. Fu Yi looked at the middle-aged man in front of him in astonishment. This man was Huan, who had just chased after Fu Yuanshan. But for some reason, he came back. Huan said respectfully, Young master, His Excellency sent me back. Hearing this, Fu Yi's expression was complicated and his heart was full of bitterness. He murmured, Father. Young master, His Excellency really cares about you. This was not what a servant should say. But Huan could not bear to see the father and son almost break up because of this, so he bravely said a few words for Fu Yuanshan. Although His Excellency said that he doesn't recognize you as his son, in fact, he still cares about you very much. When he saw me leave with him, he specially arranged for me to come back and protect you. Young master, I hope you can understand His Excellency's painstaking efforts. I understand. I understand everything. Fu Yi lowered his head. His body twitched and tears fell from the corners of his eyes. After a long time, the figures of the three people disappeared from the street. In the Dangyang drugstore, Lin Feng was lying absent-mindedly. His eyes were open, staring at the beam of the roof without blinking, like a pool of stagnant water. After a while, tears gushed out from the corners of his eyes, flowing down his cheeks and soaking the pillow. The room was silent, but it was filled with an indescribable sadness. In front of Fu Yuanshan, Fu Yi, Qi Ming, Lin Yun, and Huan, he always maintained an optimistic and cheerful look. It seemed that the loss of the refining ability did not affect him at all. For him, it seemed that it did not matter whether he had the refining ability or not. He easily accepted the cruel fact. However, was it really the truth? Hiss! He took a deep breath, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not stop the rapid flow of tears. He raised his hands feebly. Although he was in heart-wrenching pain, there was no reaction on his face. How could the pain in his body compare to the pain in his heart? Losing the refining ability was tantamount to losing everything. Losing the ability to become a great refining master, losing the ability to restore the prestige of the Lin family, losing the ability to protect his brother. Lin Feng's throat emitted a painful roar. His seriously injured hands were clenched into fists. Streams of blood seeped out of his body and dyed the gauze red. It looked so horrible. Living like this, it was better to die and be done with it. But he was unwilling. If he had died in the explosion, it would have been fine. But since he did not die, taking the initiative to seek death was tantamount to cowardice, and more importantly, selfishness. If he died, it would be easy to be free. But if Lin Yun lived, he was afraid that he would live in torment, pain, and hatred for the rest of his life. He could not imagine how painful Lin Yun's future life would be without support. Could he be so selfish? Cheer up, I have to cheer up. Lin Feng clenched his teeth and cheered himself up. I can't admit defeat, I can't bow down to fate. He breathed heavily, his heart full of contradictions and struggles. Master, master, master. When he was completely immersed in pain and sorrow, he vaguely heard some voices. But when he listened carefully, it seemed that he did not hear anything. Everything seemed to be just his illusion. He was stunned for a moment, then slowly calmed down. Finally, he laughed at himself. Lin Feng, oh Lin Feng, you lived 30 years in your previous life. You can't take it easy because of such a small thing. Has your usual steadiness been eaten by dogs? He glanced at Nono next to him, and his eyes became gentle. If it were not for Nono, he was afraid that this time he would not have just been seriously injured. Nono paid such a heavy price to create a chance of survival for him. If he did not cherish his life, how could he face Nono? Whether it is for my brother, father, or Nono, I have to live well. Lin Feng took a deep breath. He was not just living for himself. There was a heavy burden on his shoulders. How could Lin Yun bear it without him? The sky gradually brightened. Double Dragon's Town, which was sandwiched between Autumn Mountain and the Thousand Tortoise Mountain, was covered in a heavy fog. The fog, in particular, created a strange, dreamy, and colorful scenery under the sunlight. It was quite beautiful. Lin Feng had fallen asleep at some point. Strictly speaking, it was only the second time that he had rested in the outside world since he started refining. At this moment, Lin Feng's consciousness was hazy, and he entered the number 1 space without him knowing it. Perhaps, entering the number 1 space had become a habit for him and an inseparable part of his life. Master, 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 Lin Feng woke up in a daze. He opened his eyes, only to see number 1 shaking him gently. Seeing that Lin Feng had woken up, number 1 said, Master, you've rested for 4 hours in the outside world and 8 hours in the number 1 space. This is the longest rest you've had so far. Although your mental power, physical toughness, and talents have improved, I hope that you won't slack off, Master. Otherwise, your achievements will be far away from you. Slack off? Lin Feng shook his head and sighed. I don't want to slack off either. However, my body is so heavily wounded that I'll lose the ability to refine forever. So, why should I learn the skills of refining? Bitterness filled his mouth as he spoke. Number 1 was dazed for a moment. Then he asked, Lose the ability to refine forever? Who told you that? Lin Feng glanced at number 1 and said, He's an experienced doctor. Hearing this, number 1 frowned. But, according to number 1's analysis, Master's body is recovering at an impressive speed. Based on this speed, Master's injuries should be completely healed within half a year. If Master can learn some gymnastics techniques, this time can be shortened even further. Master, you weren't fooled by the doctor, were you? Lin Feng suddenly became spirited. He stood up and grabbed number 1's hand. He asked in shock, Is what you said true? Number 1 said, The first rule of number 1's AI core program is honesty. Lin Feng clenched his fists in excitement. I can really recover. Then, he frowned again. He clearly heard from Lin Yun that Dr. Yang said that his injuries would not be healed in his lifetime. Why was number 1's analysis the opposite of Dr. Yang's? Could it be that Dr. Yang was really lying to him? But Dr. Yang has no reason to lie to me. Lin Feng still couldn't figure it out. Number 1 said again, If it was before, that doctor's judgment should be correct. However, Master's physical toughness and talent have improved tremendously. Naturally, there's no such thing as being unable to recover. I understand. Lin Feng laughed. Actually, you and Dr. Yang are right. What's wrong is that no one knows that my physical toughness and talent have improved. There was a cheerful smile on his face. The confident, cheerful, calm, and mature Lin Feng was back. However, half a year. He murmured, Half a year is too long. The young master's tournament is only 4 months away. I can't wait that long. Now that things had come to this, he had to think of another way. No matter what, he had to recover before the young master's tournament. Chapter 77. The autumn wind grew stronger and time flew by. The temperature suddenly dropped, and the autumn wind that swept over Twin Dragon's town also carried a trace of loneliness. Unknowingly, it had been more than a month since Lin Feng was attacked. The Lin family's blacksmith shop was rebuilt. Although it occupied the same area as before, the total area of the house was much larger. It had been upgraded from a tile-roofed house to a 2-story bungalow. Outside, the front yard was the same as before. Other than a pergola, it was basically the same as before. The backyard was paved with stone slabs around the pond, and saplings were planted around the slabs. The interior was also painted with materials brought back from the city. It was bright and pleasing to the eye. With Lin Feng's current wealth, it was not difficult to build such an elegant courtyard. What was originally a smithing room had been renovated to resemble a smithing room. There was a complete set of smithing tools in the room, and the quality was top-notch as well. It was almost comparable to the smithing room in the blacksmith guild that was specially used for the 3-star blacksmith examination. At this time, the sound of tinkling could be heard from the crafting room. Lin Feng was lying on a soft chair, resting with his eyes closed. No one knew that he was cultivating, and his progress was not slow. The cultivation technique was recorded in an ancient book that Lin Tao had given him. It seemed that the effect was not bad. My physical strength is already 256p. I wonder if I can break through the first rank and become a second-rank Earth Warrior before the Young Masters tournament? Lin Feng murmured. Ever since he broke through to the first rank, he could increase his physical strength through cultivation technique. It was just that his talent was too low before, and the effects of cultivation techniques were not as good as his own training. Now that his talent had improved, he naturally did not need to train hard. As for why his talent improved, he did not know the reason. Not long ago, Yang Yi came to visit him. He asked Yang Yi indirectly, but Yang Yi was also confused and did not know anything. In the end, he gave up looking for an answer and could only attribute it all to Nono. This was because the day his innate talent increased was also the day Nono underwent a strange change. In this 1 month, his mind power had also improved tremendously. He had passed the 51st level of the beginner version of elimination, and his mental strength had increased from the original 1520p to 2318p. This meant that the time acceleration rate in space number 1 had reached a terrifying 231. 8 times. Only 1 night had passed in the outside world, but several months had passed in space number 1. Of course, 2318p was not the limit of his mental strength. It was just that the difficulty of each stage of elimination increased by a lot, especially after the 50th stage. The 50th and 51st stage had already taken up a lot of his time. As for the 52nd stage, it was even more difficult. He felt powerless every time. If he spent a lot of time on elimination, he was afraid that he would not have enough time to practice the 10,000 casting technique. The Youth Masters tournament was just around the corner, so he could not waste any more time on eliminate. Everything would have to wait until the Young Masters tournament was over. Speaking of the Young Masters tournament, Lin Feng could not help but think of the 10,000 casting technique that he had mastered so far. He smiled and thought, I have mastered 5,213 technique. This level is not low among the refiners of Samsung, right? It had only been 1 month. There were still 3 months left. I have to work harder in the next 3 months. In the short span of a month, his ability had improved tremendously. His progress was clearly visible. Everything was progressing in a good direction. Unknowingly, the crisp sound in the refining room stopped. The figure of a young man slowly walked out. Master. The young man stood in front of Lin Feng and bowed slightly. Lin Feng opened his eyes. Have you mastered it? The young man nodded. Yes, I have. Looking at the calm young man in front of him, Lin Feng could not help but exclaim. He is indeed the child of a 5-star refiner. Although he did not inherit Fu Yuanshan's talent in cultivation, he has inherited Fu Yuanshan's talent in technique. In fact, his talent is even better than Fu Yuanshan's. I'm afraid that the talent of those 6-star refiners is not as good as his. If this young man was not his disciple, he would be jealous. This kind of skill talent was simply breathtaking. Although my talent has improved a lot, compared to him, there is still a big gap. Lin Feng had to admit that this young man was truly a special genius. Lin Feng slowly stood up and walked to the refining room. After a month of recuperation and cultivation, he was already able to walk on the ground. After entering the refining room, Lin Feng pointed at a pile of terraces. Go and have a try. First, it was the fire in his palm. The young man's fire in his palm was extremely outstanding. If outsiders knew about it, many Samsung refiners would be ashamed of their inferiority. It could be seen that the test that Lin Feng set for him back then was not completely useless. His basic skills were extremely solid. In a flash, the terrace went through 3 degrees of heat. The internal particles became active, and it was in the best state. Huff, the young man's body moved. His posture was not that elegant, but it gave people a feeling of visual enjoyment. He raised the giant hammer. In the next instant, the quiet figure instantly became enthusiastic. It was as if he had poured all of his passion into this moment of weapon refinement. It was still a storm, but his movements were more refined and free than those of the old blacksmith. It was like a wanton flame. Ding ding ding, ding ding ding. His movements were extremely fast. Compared to when Lin Feng first learned forging, he was even faster by 3 times. From the beginning to the end, he did not make a single mistake. His control of techniques was also amazing. In just a moment, he had already stopped his movements. That violent flame seemed to have been extinguished and disappeared without a trace in an instant. He quieted down, and was as cold and indifferent as he was at the beginning. Without the slightest complacency, he turned around and walked toward Lin Feng. He said respectfully, "Teacher. Congratulations." Lin Feng revealed a smile. "You are already a 2-star refiner." Pausing for a moment, he continued, "You have completely mastered the 100 casting technique. Whether it is the technique itself or the combination of the techniques, you have done very well. In this aspect, I have nothing more to teach you. You just need to wait for a few more days before you can start learning the 1000 casting technique." The young man's cold face finally revealed a smile. At that moment, it was as if the ice in the entire world had melted. "Father, did you see that? Your son only used a month. A month, and he became a 2-star refiner." The young man clenched his fists and murmured silently in his heart, "I did not embarrass you. My choice is correct." How he wished that his father was right in front of him right now, to share this joy and glory with him. Lin Feng understood his feelings very well. Patting his shoulder, Lin Feng chuckled. "If you can become a Samsung refiner a day earlier, perhaps your father will be even happier." Hearing this, the young man raised his head and met Lin Feng's encouraging eyes. He nodded slightly. That day will definitely not be too late. His delicate face was full of confidence and indifference. "Brother, time to eat." Lin Yun walked through the corridor with a smile. Lin Feng turned his head and replied, "Okay, you first serve Nono a bowl. Let's go and eat. Only when you are full will you have the strength to study." Lin Feng patted the young man's shoulder again and then turned around to walk to the backyard. After Lin Feng walked 5 or 6 steps away, the young man suddenly shouted at Lin Feng, "Thank you, teacher." Without turning his head, Lin Feng waved his hand and said indifferently, "Let's eat." A smile crept up on the young man's face and he quickly followed. As soon as Lin Feng entered the room, Nono happily flew on his shoulder. "Lin Feng." Nono intimately rubbed against his ear. "Little traitor." Lin Yun pretended to be angry. "Come on, the one who prepares food for you every day is me. Do you understand that?" However, as soon as Nono heard this, it turned its head and left a beautiful back view. After a month of rest, this little guy recovered faster than Lin Feng. Now it looked basically fine. It was chirping all day and was very lively. People who didn't know would never think that it was covered with cuts and bruises and was on the verge of death a month ago. The 3 of them sat around the wooden table and enjoyed another day of lunch. "Brother, do you really plan to go to the county town in a few days?" Lin Yun brought up a heavy topic. His eyes were full of worry. "Your body has just recovered a little. The journey will be too bumpy. You won't be able to withstand the torment." Lin Feng's chopsticks stopped in his bowl. He sighed and said, "This idea isn't on a whim. It's something I've planned for a long time." He looked at Lin Yun and Fu Yi with worry. He said, "Last time those people tried to kill us but were killed by us. I'm afraid the mastermind won't let it go. Although Mr. Hua is powerful, the other side also has a lot of people. As the saying goes, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. I'm afraid Mr. Hua won't be able to protect us. The longer we stay here, the more danger we will be in. Because we can't be sure whether the other side will send people to deal with us or not." Even if they go to the city, it may not be absolutely safe. There are only 3 safe places: the county governor's mansion, the craftsman's guild, and Qingfeng College. Lin Yun lowered his head and clenched his fist. He cursed, "Those damn bastards! Sooner or later, I will kill them all." Chapter 78. Of course we have to take revenge. Lin Feng smiled faintly, but that smile sent chills down one's spine. But now is not the time. He warned Lin Yun, "You have to be careful these days. If not necessary, try not to go out to avoid any accidents." In such a difficult period, they had to be even more careful and not give the enemy any chance. Right now, they had neither strength nor influence. In a small place like Jianglong County, they could find many people who could deal with them. The Lotus Flower Mercenary Group, in terms of overall strength, should not be inferior to the county governor's mansion and the craftsman's guild. However, the latter was under the protection of the government, so the Lotus Flower Mercenary Group did not dare to extend their claws here. Although the Lotus Flower Mercenary Group did not dare to do anything to the county governor's mansion and the craftsman's guild, it was not difficult to deal with them. Unless they hid in the county governor's mansion forever and never came out. "Brother, don't worry. I will be careful." Lin Yun held his breath and said in a low voice. Nodding his head, Lin Feng instructed, "Pack your things for the next 2 days. When the time comes, there won't be any more trouble. As for Uncle Yang, I have already talked to him a few days ago. He will personally escort us to the county. At the same time, he will also transfer half of the county governor's mansion's forces. This way, it should be relatively safer." Now that things had come to this, Lin Feng did not dare to take any more risk. After all, the Lotus Flower Mercenary Group had attacked twice, which already explained a lot of problems. This mercenary group was definitely an extremely daring existence. Lin Feng did not think that they would give up so easily. In the end, the attraction of the incomplete map was too great. For it, many people were willing to take risk. Okay. Lin Yun agreed. Lin Feng picked up his chopsticks. "All right, let's continue eating." The 3 of them silently enjoyed their lunch. But each of them had a complicated expression and were absent-minded. Obviously, each of them had something on their mind. The entire meal was especially depressing. After a moment, Lin Feng came to the front yard with Fu Yi following behind him. "After reaching the county, you can take the 2-star blacksmith examination," Lin Feng said to Fu Yi. "I'm sure President Qi will be very happy to know that you've become a 2-star blacksmith." In other words, if Fu Yuanshan knew about this news, he would also be very happy. Fu Yi shook his head and said, "No, I plan to take the Samsung refiner's test directly." "Why?" Lin Feng was stunned. "I heard from senior brother Jiang and the others that you didn't participate in the 1-star and 2-star craftsman's assessment, but directly participated in the Samsung craftsman's assessment." Fu Yi smiled. "As your disciple, I can't lose face for you." Strictly speaking, Fu Yi was Lin Feng's first direct disciple, and also Lin Feng's only direct disciple. Jiang He, Qiao Wen, Zhang Ida, and the rest of them were just nominal disciples. Lin Feng didn't try to persuade him. It was Fu Yi's own business whether he would take the assessment or not. Lin Feng was not interested in making decisions for Fu Yi. He nodded and said, "With your talent, it shouldn't take you too long to master the combination of 1070 skills of 1000 casting. Fine. Now that you've made up your mind, you can take the Samsung refiner's test directly." "Thank you, Master." Fu Yi was immediately overjoyed. Lin Feng waved his hands and smiled. "All right. You can continue to familiarize yourself with the combination of 107 skills of 100 casting. We won't be staying in Double Dragon's Town for long. You must cherish it." "Yes, Master." In the blink of an eye, It was time for Lin Feng's group to leave Double Dragon's Town. The autumn wind was still bleak, and the hazy white fog faintly shrouded the town. The two rivers were surging with waves, and occasionally, fish would jump out of the water to absorb the rare trace of sunlight. The trees on both sides of the river swayed with the wind, like beautiful women in oro, whose graceful figures were enchanting. Double Dragon's Town. Lin Feng lifted the curtain of the carriage and looked at the familiar grass and trees. His heart was filled with endless emotions. He didn't know when he could return to his hometown, the place where he was born and raised. He put down his hand and said, "Let's go." Yang Yi nodded and ordered the people behind him, "Let's go." The next moment, almost 20 horses galloped. The neat sound of hooves echoed on the riverbank. The sound of hooves was accompanied by the rolling wheels of a carriage. Clack, clack. In the carriage, Lin Feng felt more and more frustrated. Day and night alternated, and the sun and moon rotated. In the blink of an eye, the carriage was already outside the county. At the city gate, Yang Yi and the people behind him stopped at the same time. "Lin Feng, I'll stop here. After you enter the city, don't be too careless. The Lotus mercenary group's methods are endless and impossible to guard against. I suggest you ask President Qi for help." Yang Yi lowered his head and reminded the people in the carriage, "President Qi has been operating here for many years. He should have a way to prevent the Lotus mercenary group from causing trouble." He glanced at Fu Yi. Besides, with Fu Yi's friendship, President Qi won't sit idly by. After a pause, he slowly sat up straight. "That's all I have to say. I wish you a safe journey." "Thank you, Uncle Yang." Lin Feng lifted the curtain and said with a smile, "You have to be careful on the road." Yang Yi smiled and nodded. He then turned around and said loudly to everyone, "Let's go." Lin Feng also said to Lin Yun and the others, "Let's enter the city." After entering the county, they didn't go to the craftsman's guild. Instead, they went directly to the Suji blacksmith shop. Not long after, 3 horses and a carriage stopped outside the Suji blacksmith shop. Lin Feng, Lin Yun, Fu Yi, and Hua An walked into the blacksmith shop one by one. "Master Lin, Master Fu." Butler Defu saw Lin Feng and the others at a glance and walked forward to greet them. However, his words were more distant than before, as if there was a layer of mountain between them. He seemed to have thought of something and his eyes flashed with embarrassment. He quickly said, "Why did you suddenly come to the blacksmith shop? Are you tired from the journey? Why don't you go to the inner courtyard and rest for a while?" Then he called a servant and whispered a few words to him. He turned to Lin Feng and the others and said, "I've already told him to inform the shopkeeper. You can wait in the inner courtyard for a while. Good things don't go out, bad things spread far and wide." Lin Feng was ambushed and severely injured, causing him to lose his ability to refine weapons. It was unknown how this news spread out. Now, in the entire Jianglong County, there was probably no one who didn't know about it. Lin Feng's prestige plummeted. Countless people felt sorry for him. It was really a pity that a genius fell just like that. Affected by this incident, the blacksmith shop's business situation also had some problems. Fortunately, Jiang He Qiaowen and the others were all Samsung blacksmith. The blacksmith shop's foundation was still there, so the problem wasn't big. After seeing Lin Feng and the others, the sales staff and a few blacksmith apprentices didn't have any reaction. It was as if they didn't see anything. Only God knew how enthusiastic they were when they saw Lin Feng a month ago. Many people even had a trace of gloating or disdain in their eyes. "Okay, then let's go to the inner courtyard and wait." Lin Feng didn't seem to see the expressions of the people, and still said to Defu with a smile, "Gentlemen, this way please." Defu smiled. He sighed in his heart. It's a pity that such a genius actually encountered such a tragedy at the most glorious moment of his life. He also sympathized with Lin Feng's experience. However, sympathy was sympathy. The blacksmith shop was not a charity. There was no obligation to support a Samsung blacksmith who had lost his ability to forge weapons. No matter how brilliant Lin Feng was in the past, no matter how eye-catching he was now just a cripple. No one could change this fact. After the group left, there were whispers in the sales area. He has already become a cripple, yet he still dares to come here. That's right. Some people are just standing in the latrine. I'm afraid that seeing our blacksmith shop's business is so good, he still wants a few more cups of the pie. Isn't it just good luck that he taught 16 Samsung blacksmiths? If it weren't for Master Jiang and the others, Butler Defew would have kicked him out long ago. What the hell? Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? You've obviously become a cripple, yet you still have the nerve to come here? Perhaps it was because they had once been humble, lowered their heads, and flattered in front of Lin Feng, so they wanted to take it back one by one, as if this could re-establish their dignity and status. Inner courtyard. Defew said awkwardly, "Please wait a moment. I have other things to take care of, so I won't accompany you any longer. Please forgive me." "Well, it's okay." Lin Feng smiled and said, "Butler Defew, don't think too much. We can wait for a while." "Okay, goodbye." Defew left in a hurry, with a trace of embarrassment on his face. As soon as Defew left, Lin Yun was so angry that his teeth itched. He cursed, "Brother, what's wrong with your blacksmith shop? Look at their expressions just now. How can they be like that?" He didn't have much contact with people outside of Twin Dragons Town. Even if he did, they were basically the children of Qinfeng College, who were around his age. Naturally, he couldn't understand the cruel reality. Fu Yi also frowned and said in a low voice, "This is the reality. I've seen too many things like this. However, they will regret it one day for treating Master like this." Lin Feng smiled and said, "Why should we care about their attitude? We live for ourselves, not for them." He didn't seem to be affected in the slightest. They were just a bunch of clowns. Were they worth his attention? P.S. Please recommend them. Chapter 79. Shopkeeper Su Liang had not arrived yet, but a group of old blacksmiths had already arrived. "Teacher! Teacher! Teacher!" The group of old blacksmiths shouted one after another, their attitudes quite respectful. It seemed that the news of Lin Feng's injury did not affect them. They glanced at Fu Yi and smiled as they called him little junior brother. However, this little junior brother was a direct disciple, while they were just nominal disciples. In terms of status among the teachers, this little junior brother was above them. "Why aren't you forging weapons? What are you doing here?" Lin Feng waved his hand. "Jiang," he said respectfully, "just now I heard from Butler Defew that teacher has come. As disciples, we naturally came to pay our respects." Lin Feng said, "You should also know about my injury. Now that things have come to this, do you still recognize me as your teacher?" Hearing this, Jiang, he said decisively, "Once a teacher, always a teacher. Since we have become your disciples, then we will be your disciples for the rest of our lives. Whether you are injured or not, you are our most respected teacher." Lin Feng said with a smile that was not a smile, "Then why didn't I see you come to Twin Dragons Town to see me?" Jiang He, Qiao Wen, Zhang Ida, and the others looked at each other awkwardly. Then, they tacitly withdrew their gazes and lowered their heads, not saying a word. Lin Feng was too lazy to argue and said, "All right, I understand your difficulties. If there's nothing else, you can disperse." "Teacher." Jiang He looked at everyone, and finally his gaze fell on Lin Feng. With a slightly guilty tone, he said, "No matter what others think, I am willing to follow you for the rest of my life. I have no children and am alone in this world, so I have no scruples. In the future, if teacher has any instructions, just say it." This disciple will not refuse in the slightest. Everyone couldn't help but be moved by his words. Behind Jiang He, Zhang Ida quietly pulled on the corner of Jiang He's clothes and gave him a look. Unfortunately, Jiang He did not even turn his head, his gaze still firm. Lin Feng looked at Jiang He in surprise. He did not expect that Jiang He would not give up under such circumstances. You have to consider it carefully. If you continue to follow me. Lin Feng stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes sharp. If you do so, you may encounter unknown dangers at any time. Don't think that I'm exaggerating. I'm sure you haven't forgotten about the attack on me last month, right? Even so, you still won't change your mind? Lin Feng looked straight at Jiang He. Yes. Jiang He's expression did not change. He had already expected what Lin Feng had said. Otherwise, he would not have hesitated for so long before making up his mind. Lin Feng nodded and turned to look at the others. What about you guys? He intended to give these people another chance. Qiao Wen and Yao Yongkai looked at each other, then smiled and took a step forward. The two of them said in unison, "We are willing to follow teacher." As for the others, they all lowered their head. Silence was their attitude. I understand. Lin Feng suddenly smiled. Actually, no matter what you choose, I don't blame you. After all, most of you have sons and daughters. Some of you even have grandchildren who are about the same age as me. Even if you don't think for yourself, you have to think for your family. They are innocent, and there is no need for them to participate in such danger. So, I don't blame you, really. It was impossible to say that he was not disappointed, but Lin Feng also understood their decision. If Lin Feng was in their shoes, he might have made the same choice as them if he had encountered such a situation. After all, this was not a matter of benefits, but a matter of the safety of the whole family. Everyone's faces were filled with shame, and they lowered their heads in shame. Zhang Ida suddenly knelt down and said, "Teacher, please forgive this disciple for being unfilial. Please forgive this disciple for being unfilial." The rest of the people knelt down one after another, their voices full of shame. Fu Yi looked at them coldly, snorting lightly with a disdainful expression. Although he did not say anything, it made them lower their heads even more, and their hearts were even more ashamed. Zhang Ida. Qiao Wen stared at Zhang Ida with an ugly expression. Senior brother Qiao. Zhang Ida looked at Qiao Wen timidly, his voice lacking confidence. Qiao Wen snorted, turned his head, and said indifferently, "Don't call me senior brother Qiao. I don't have a junior brother like you." Qiao Wen. Lin Feng stopped Qiao Wen, shook his head, and said, "That's enough, Qiao Wen. They have their own difficulties. Since they have made their choice, then we don't need to force them." He turned to look at everyone, and his eyes gradually became cold. "However, from today onwards, you have nothing to do with me, Lin Feng. You go your own way, and I go mine. Between you and me, there is no longer any master-disciple relationship. In the future, whether I live or die, rich or poor, it has nothing to do with you. Teacher." Everyone trembled, and looked up at Lin Feng in disbelief. Lin Feng said indifferently, "Aren't you afraid of being implicated? Isn't it better this way? By severing our master-disciple relationship, they have no reason to find trouble with you, and you don't have to worry about any danger." Lin Yun. Lin Feng turned his head and shouted, "Brother, what's the matter?" Lin Yun walked to Lin Feng's side. "Can you lend me your saber for a moment?" "Of course, no problem." Lin Feng suddenly pulled out the long saber on Lin Yun's back, and a cold light flashed across the blade, and then he slashed it in front of his chest, startling Lin Yun, Fu Yi, and the others. Lin Yun immediately exclaimed, "Brother!" Voila! Lin Feng's robe on his chest was cut by the sharp blade, and it was separated to two sides. Putting away the long saber, Lin Feng said, "You and I will be like this robe, and from now on we will be strangers." Everyone's eyes reddened, and they painfully lowered their heads. Their eyes were full of struggle and shame. Passing the long saber back to Lin Yun, Lin Feng said, "All right, masters, you can go." He turned around and no longer looked at them. He could understand their actions, but he couldn't silently accept it. Everyone had their own difficulties, and he also had his own position. Masters. What an ironic and unfamiliar title. Everyone clenched their fingers and looked at the familiar back. Their feelings were extremely complicated. Teacher! Zhang Ida shouted with a trembling voice. However, Lin Feng turned around and didn't respond. After a long time, the group silently stood up and looked at Lin Feng's back for a long time, then slowly turned around and gradually dispersed. After everyone left, Lin Feng slowly turned around and took a deep breath. He was expressionless, and no one knew how he felt at this time, but presumably, he must be very uncomfortable at this time, right? His eyes glanced back and forth between Qiaowen, Jiang He, and Yao Yongkai, and a touch of relief flashed in his eyes. Among the 16 nominal disciples, there were finally 3 who were willing to stay and face the unknown danger with him. Whether their hearts were really as they appeared to be, at least, Lin Feng didn't come out empty-handed. One day you will find that your choice today is actually the wisest choice, Lin Feng said with a slightly profound meaning. A group of ungrateful wretches. Fu Yi looked in the direction of the departure of the crowd and whispered. Lin Feng waved his hand and said, "All right, this matter, don't mention it again in the future." "Yes, master," Fu Yi replied. However, it could still be seen from his eyes that he was still indignant at this time. "Let's go." Lin Feng lifted his foot and walked out of the blacksmith shop. Lin Yun said in surprise, "You're not waiting for the shopkeeper? Since there's no place for us in Su's blacksmith shop, why do we have to pester and pester?" Lin Feng smiled, and no one could understand the pride buried in the depths of his smile. "If there's no place for us here, there will be a place for us. The world is so big, how can there be no place for us? As for shopkeeper Su, it will only be awkward if we meet him, so we might as well not see him." After saying that, he simply turned around and left without hesitation. However, after taking a few steps, he stopped and said to Qiaowen and the other 2, "You stay and deal with the matters in the blacksmith shop first, then come and find me." He thought for a while and said, "For a short time, I should be staying at Manjushri Inn." "Yes, master," the 3 said in unison. Then, Lin Feng and the others left in a carefree manner. They came empty-handed and left suddenly. It seemed that he was destined to be a passer-by in Su's blacksmith shop, not a resident. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.